Welcome back to the IMNerd podcast. I'm your host, Frayway, and I'm here with my co-host, Kenny. And we are here. We are here for episode 4. I think I am in front of you, at least virtually, anyway. Either way, we are here today to talk about Monster Hunter. one of my favorite games. One of Kenny's newly favorite games since he just started with Rise.
I'm pretty excited to talk about some Monster Hunter.
Yes.
Yeah, the first one I played for real was Rise. I played one of the PSP ones. I'd be lying to you if I told you I knew which one it was, but I know it was in Japanese, and I played like a
English patch.
I just know it was in Japanese.
That's how you know you were hardcore, because I was fucking hardcore back in the day.
But that's the only one I played, and even then, I don't even think I got the higher rank. Like, I think I just played it a little bit, had some fun, and kind of put it down.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we'll just go over like what Monster Hunter actually is. For people who don't know, it's actually Capcom's biggest game now. Capcom, as you know, they've made Street Fighter, Mega Man, the Devil May Cry series, the Resident Evil. Yeah, yep. The Resident Evil series. They have some fucking huge offerings on Capcom. But Monster Hunter World became their biggest selling game of all time. I think it's
Marvel versus Capcom.
Yeah. Does Capcom actually like make those by themselves? Like, they don't use, I guess, Marvel.
Yeah, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And a funny little through line. If you remember back in JMC collectibles, they had an MVC2 cabinet that I knew got a lot of play.
Yeah. Yeah. Back then, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was huge, and it's still. I mean, I know people still play it. I know people still play Marvel 3. I have a whole group of friends that do. But yeah, so Capcom's a pretty big gaming company. Everyone knows Capcom. If for nothing else, at least Street Fighter, because most people like just know Ken and Ryu, Chun-Li, that whole thing. But they also make Monster Hunter. So randomly, Monster Hunter is like their biggest thing ever. And now they just created Monster Hunter Rise exclusively for the Switch. So talking about what Monster Hunter is, literally like in the name, you fight monsters, like you hunt them. But it's really fun because you kill these things that are pretty much mostly dragons and dinosaurs. Now they have like giant monkeys that look like something from Dragon Ball Z, like it turns gold and everything like that. They have snakes, all kinds of crazy lizards, and just golems, like all kinds of crazy things.
Birds.
Yeah, like crazy
giant birds.
Dogs. Like now you're fighting pretty much everything, right? Like you literally fight anything that your imagination can think of. But the real point of the game is, one, you play with a bunch of friends, which is really fun to do. It's a co-op experience. Up to 4 players can play. And you go out, you hunt or capture these monsters, and you get to create weapons and armor out of their actual body parts. So part of the allure of it is like, you know, fashion hunting is a big part of Monster Hunter, and that the allure of why people actually play it is literally so that they can, I like this monster a lot. I think this monster looks cool as shit. Let me kill it and see what its armor looks like. And then you kind of like can mix the armors together, create like some cool display on your character, and then also cool ass weapons, which, you know, I'm sure Kenny, being a great sword player, loves.
That's right. The greatsword is the best weapon in Monster Hunter. And if it was up to me, it'd be the only weapon.
So should we get right to that? Like, all right. So favorite weapon. So Kenny's is the greatsword.
I fucking love the greatsword.
My favorite weapon changes, I feel like, each game. Like I'm an OG. I've played Monster Hunter since the very first one back on PlayStation 2 and PSP. Like, now my current favorite weapon is the longsword, just because of how many changes it's undergone in the past, like, I don't know, over 10 years. It's like a dance now. Like, that fucking weapon just feels so fluid, like water. Like, remember in Game of Thrones when the one water dancer dude was trying to train Arya, and he's like, you know, using a sword is like a water dance. Like, I feel like the longsword has become that. Like, it's just like there's a rhythm to it. So I fucking love the longsword now. But going back like to the earlier games, I used to be, and this is really weird because I don't even touch this weapon really anymore, but the sword and shield, very basic, but in the old Monster Hunter games, like the very first one, the sword and shield was OP because of the damage that it did. Like, I think the damage formula was just fucked. And it used to do way too much damage for how quickly you can attack and like evade and block and do everything else. So I used to be like a sword and shield user. But then like nowadays, like I'm all long sorted out. Like if you look at my guild card, it's mostly long sword and then like secondaries light bow gun. And light bow gun just because I like broken shit and it's just absolutely insane.
I love looking at my guild card. I'm pretty sure I might boot the game up just to look at it.
Yeah, your guild card is great sword. It is very clearly. I mean, you like the heavy weapons.
Yeah, I play great sword's my main by far. So yeah, Rise being the first Monster Hunter I really, really got into. Greatsword is my main by far. Like I don't know, probably 600 hunts or something like that with Greatsword.
What is it about Greatsword that you like so much?
In general, I do like the big beefy weapons. In a lot of games I play, like in RPGs or whatever, like I like the big fat, like the Buster Sword, right? Like Cloud's Buster Sword.
Right.
Like I would prefer a Buster Sword over Sephiroth's like Masamune or Muramasa. I forget which one it's called.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. Like a light weapon, as opposed to like a heavy.
Even though Sephiroth's weapon is huge, right?
Yes.
Like, it's thin. I like that them big chunky weapons.
Them big chunkus.
Yeah, like when I play Dungeons and Dragons, like I'll always use like a great sword or a great axe. Like I use big ass weapons.
So you like your hits to mean something. You like
and with great sword when you hit, because I remember the first weapon I tried was switch axe. The switch axe just looked cool. Yeah, and I would hit a lot, and it would be like, especially early game, the numbers would be like 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 15. I'm like, ooh, that's a lot of damage. But then greatsword, like I charged up a hit and hit somebody one time, and it was like 300, and I was like, oh, that's my weapon. Like it just like the number was just big. Like one of my favorite games is Deskaya, and Deskaya is all about breaking the game and getting your numbers to be like 99,999 with a K next to it.
Right.
It's like this is the number, and it's also a K next to it, or an M next to it.
So add 3 zeros, or add in that case, if it's an M, add 6 zeros to it, and that's your actual.
So I just love seeing big numbers, and the weapon I think is rewarding to play. Like it's really fun. Like I like the positioning and like the time. Like when you charge up a charge slash and the monster's head comes right where you want it, or the satisfaction of cutting off the tail.
And usually you get a flinch because the greatsword just hits that fucking hard.
Yeah, it's just a really satisfying weapon. I like that you can't kind of just like spam it. Like I remember I tried dual blades, and I'm sure they're really fun for people that are into the play style. But for me, I didn't really enjoy just like, it just felt like I could just like roll on the monster.
It's very like quick hit, little bit of damage here and there. You're kind of just like pegging the monster a bit.
Yeah.
And it
didn't end up appealing to me all that much. Whereas like the big greatsword did. And then I tried hammer. I like hammer a lot, greatsword a lot. Switch axe is still fun. I do really like the heavy weapons.
Yeah.
That said, I guess lance would be considered a heavy weapon, but I don't fuck with lance.
Yeah, me either. We're anti-lance on this podcast. If you look at my guild card and Monster Hunter games across the board, I have never been a lance player. There was one Monster Hunter, and I want to say it was the first and second Monster Hunter games where the lance and the gun lance were really good, respectively. So in the first one, you could use the regular lance to like stun.
Gun lance was in the series that early?
It was. I'm pretty sure gun lance is in the second Monster Hunter. So quick fact. I have some trivia here. So because Monster Hunter now has 14 different weapon classes, right? Like in your first real game, you've seen all 14, right? But it wasn't always like that. So the very first Monster Hunter game only had 7 weapons, and it was greatsword, sword and shield, dual blades, lance, hammer, light bow gun, and heavy bow gun. So the first game doesn't have.
I find it interesting that the bow guns were in the game before the bow.
Yes, there was right. So
that's interesting to me.
So, and they were the only ranged weapon at the time. Like it's just those two. But the first game doesn't even have gun lance, like hunting horn, switch axe, charge blade, insect glaive, the bow. The long sword's not even in the first game, which is crazy, right? Because that weapon is like, it's very basic, but it's so iconic too. When people think about Monster Hunter, I'm pretty sure right now the most popular weapon is still like the long sword. At least it was in World and Iceborne. So, so Monster Hunter 2 introduced the long sword, the gun lance, the hunting horn, and the bow. And so
the gun lance seems to me like one of those weapons you introduce after you've kind of exhausted all normal options. You're like, all right, I want to do some weird shit. Put a gun on a lance. Like gun lance, I'm expecting gun lance to come in like the 6th game.
Yeah, they're really ready to spice shit up, right?
Like after they did all the other shit, they're like, what do we do now? Like, I don't know, make the lance explode.
Yeah, just start putting bombs on shit. Just start sending them in. Yeah, so the long sword
gun great sword.
that would be fire.
Yes,
that would be fucking fire. Can we talk about that? Okay, so anyway, second game, longsword, gun lance, hunting horn, bow, and then the third game introduces switch axe. Just switch axe is new to Monster Hunter 3 or Try or whatever you want to call it. That's when the switch axe comes out, and then finally
that was the Wii one, right?
Yes, that is the one that came out on the Wii. Or I think it came out on Wii, but I also think it was portable as well,
right? Because how does that? Because there's like the console versions and the PSP versions, right?
Yeah, so they also have Monster Hunter Portable, right? And then they have like Monster Hunter. So every like even Monster Hunter 1 it's on the PSP, and then it's also like on PlayStation 2.
What's crazy is I don't even know. I always knew Monster Hunter as a portable game. I thought when the Wii one came out, that was the first console Monster Hunter.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, only because I played it first on the PSP myself when I was a teenager. I didn't even know that there was a PlayStation 2 version of it until one day we were in GameStop, and I just saw like the guy standing there with like Rathalos in the background, like the big ass greatsword, that like the iconic greatsword.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a second, like this game comes on PlayStation 2. How is it on PS2? So I had my one friend actually ended up buying, because I think it was on that, you know how PlayStation used to have the best sellers or whatever. They were $20.
It'd be like a red top.
Yeah, so it was like $20 or whatever, and so really cheap. So he ended up buying it, and we ended up playing it. But it was not very good on PS2 just because of controls and things like that. So yeah, I mean, PSP was like where it really, for me, started. I think in Japan it was biggest on the PSP as well. Like it was really a portable. Yeah. Like,
well, because the console version, I imagine there's not really any way to play multiplayer, and I think that's one of the absolute, at least my experience with Rise, one of the best things about Monster Hunter, actually probably the best thing, is the multiplayer. Because if it was just a single player game, I'd play it for, I don't know, 10, 20 hours.
Yeah, like, and then you'd be like, all right, like I'm done.
And I'd be like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's multiplayer is like, fuck, and it's good multiplayer. Like Rise, like I know maybe we're jumping ahead a little bit, but just as a quick note, Monster Hunter Rise online lobbies is some of the best online infrastructure I've ever experienced in any game ever. Agreed. Like the fact that you connect to a lobby, and like I'm in, it's like me, Frazier, John and Joe, and we're all in a lobby, and let's say Frazier made the lobby, but his internet fucking shits and he gets kicked out of the lobby. Instead of like kicking everybody out of the lobby, instead of like it being like your connection was interrupted and we all get kicked out of the lobby, it just makes John the lobby leader. And not like the game doesn't skip for any of us. And if you're online playing, if we're hunting a Rathalos and my internet fucking dicks out, I just get I get disconnected from the fight, but Frazier, John, and Joe are still fighting Rathalos, and the fight just doesn't even skip a beat for them. And I'm still fighting Rathalos. It just turns into a solo hunt. Like it doesn't say like the connection was interrupted and then kick me out of the game. It's like I continue the hunt.
And what's cool about that is, so if a person does get disconnected from a Monster Hunter, like if the four of us are playing and then I get disconnected, so yeah, it will continue where I'm just fighting the monster alone. It will actually change the monster's HP pool to be single player for me, because monsters, when you fight them together with friends, the HP scales based on the number of people in the hunt. Yep. And new to Monster Hunter Rise, there's a different HP pool for all 4 levels of how many hunters there are. So if there's 2, there's HP for 2, 3, and 4, and it will cut back if people get disconnected. So it doesn't say like, oh, you went into a quest with 4 people, but if you get disconnected and you're by yourself now, it's still a 4 times HP monster. Like it doesn't work like that. It actually adjusts on the fly, which I think is amazing. But also you can just, so if I get disconnected, I can like quit the quest and then rejoin the lobby and then rejoin the quest that you guys are still on, assuming the monster hasn't died yet.
And as long as you quit the quest, because there's like more than one way to quit the quest. You can quit the quest and get rewards up to that point, or you can quit the quest and get no rewards. As long as you make sure you quit the quest and the way that you get no rewards,
you can join it again. Yeah, it's really cool.
Lobby. So yeah, that online experience, like I remember just it boosted the game so much more for me and boosted my respect for it so much more, because I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, I mean, we love a good co-op game. Monster Hunter, and it's not, the other cool thing about it is it's not really like a competitive game, really, right? Like it's not like winner take all when you're hunting with your friends. Like I'm trying to get something at the end that makes it where I'm better than you. It's more so just,
although that's what happens, because if I need an orb, you'll get it and I won't.
Yeah. So monsters have like drops and stuff, rare drops. So when you kill them or you capture them, you get like special reward pieces of their body. And there's certain rewards that are literally, you have a 1% chance of getting it. So, you sometimes have to fight a monster 20 times before you can get just one of its rubies or orbs or whatever they always call it, something like a gem. But sometimes one guy in your party needs this particular 2% drop, and he just will never get it in 20 hunts. And it's really annoying, because then other people will be getting
7 of them.
Yeah, you'll get 7 in those 20 hunts. And then the one guy, the guy who actually wants it, actually needs it for his weapon, he's just trying to make this one weapon that he really wants, and he just can't get it. We call it the desire meter. Like there's a desire,
but it's still super fun. Like everybody working on the monster and like somebody breaking the wings and somebody breaking the tail. Like that shit's fun.
Yeah, cutting tails off with sharp weapons is really cool. Confusing monsters with blunt weapons is really cool. There's a lot of mechanics to Monster Hunter.
And it's fun like that because it doesn't feel tedious. Like, I mean, it can be tedious, but it doesn't feel tedious when you're playing with your friends and you're hunting for a monster part because like you're excited to get the part and build that new armor and like, see what it looks like. And
there's a dopamine rush associated with Monster Hunter. It's a huge dopamine rush. Like getting that 2% drop in the rewards or carving it off the monster's dead body, like getting a Rathalos ruby. That shit, especially when you need it, like when you actually are trying to make like, oh, I want to make his greatsword and I need a ruby to upgrade it to the final level. The feeling you get when you finally see that shit come across the screen, like Rathalos ruby, is like, oh yes. Like
one thing they need to change though, when you get super high rank things like the Rathalos ruby on the reward screen, it'll sparkle. Okay. Now there's like 2 modes of play, and then there's like, but for right now, there's low rank and high rank, and then later on there's G rank. But for right now, there's low rank and G rank or high rank. When you're in low rank, the best rarity you can get is like a plate, like the monster's plate, and that'll sparkle. And it's like, hell yeah, when you're low rank, that's good. When you get the high rank, that shit needs to stop sparkling. Yeah. There's nothing more infuriating than when you beat a monster, you go to the windscreen, you see a sparkle, you get hype, and it's a fucking plate. And the thing that pisses me off more is the people you play with will get excited, like, oh, cool, you got a plate. I'm like, don't you fucking...
Right.
Stop.
Like, I don't need a plate. 27
like,
plates.
Like, stop. Yeah. Like, stop acting like getting a plate was dope. Like,
when you're at low rank, it's
72 hours.
Exactly. Like, I don't want a fucking plate. What am I going to do with this plate? Like, I got 27 of them in my box. I don't need this.
This fucking thing out of here.
There's definitely a dopamine rush that I think keeps people coming back, especially in the beginning when a new monster game drops. Like, building your box, getting all of these monster parts, because they accumulate over time, and you can just make... There's 14 different weapons. There's an armor for every single monster in the game. So, like...
I wish there was only 12 weapons.
We'll talk about that in a second. I know where you're going with that. But, like, just getting a box together of all the cool monster parts that you'll need so that you can start, like, branching out. So, for me, my favorite weapon being, like, longsword and light bowgun, insect glaive. Like, I will make those weapons first. But if I ever wanted to... Oh, it's so cool. But if I ever want to experiment, like... I need monster parts to make those things. So it's good to have like an abundance of parts, like finding a monster over and over and over again with your friends and helping them get what they need is actually beneficial to you too, which keeps the online experience going. Like I'm never mad if Kenny's like, I need to fight Zenogre because I need to get his emerald. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I actually want some of his parts anyway, because I might fuck with these new dual blades.
And it's also in like Rise, you use every monster part for melding anyway.
Yeah.
So like it's never, even if you never need a Zenogre part ever again.
Right. They found a way to use it.
When you want to meld, you'll still use the parts. So
you can get rare like equipment. Like there's the best equipment in the game actually comes from you just like there's kind of like I don't want to call it a gotcha system, but there's a system where you can turn parts that you don't need into rare equipment, and it's completely random what you get out of it. It's like a little lottery system, but it's another dopamine rush, right? Like you dump shit into it.
Good shit.
Yeah, you're like, oh my god, I hope that I get like a crazy rare equip that like will just change the game for you, because now all of your armor sets have different skills based on just having this one rare equipment piece. Which is really cool.
And it's a good way to just all those monster parts you have, it's a good way to dump them. It's a good reason for them to go into. So it's made it so that I've had people when I was in Rise, I had people that didn't start playing until a month after me. And like, even though they're at the very beginning of the game, they wanted to play with me. Like I didn't feel bad. Like I didn't feel like I was bored playing with them, or I didn't feel like it was a chore, because I was still getting shit that I wanted to use and just having fun. And
exactly.
They're still doing.
Yeah, I'm one of those people. I actually, when people start the game, they're like, "Oh man, you're too far ahead of me." Like, I'm like, "Yeah, but I enjoy." Even if I'm like at the end of the game, I enjoy going back to the beginning and helping people with like the beginning hunts and stuff like that. Like it's just kind of fun to like go back and murder a monster with in-game equipment. If you ever play any game that like has this environment where like, you have like in-game equips, and then you have the lower, they have those memes where you start off, the guy has on like a shirt, some shorts, and a club, like a club made out of fucking wood. And like, then there's you next to him, and you have on a fucking gilt knight armor with a cape and his cool ass helmet. And your sword is made out of diamond and like some dead dragon scales and shit. Like, I love going back and fighting like the earliest monster that can take like 2 hits with my friends. And it's like,
also like, it gives me an excuse to use some of the versions of the weapons that aren't that good. Like for whatever reason, don't ask me why. I like the way the Legambi greatsword looks, and like it's a trash greatsword. It's not good. Well, for whatever reason, I just like the way it looks.
But yeah, and that's the cool thing. Like,
so if I go back and fight an early monster, I can use a Legambi greatsword and be like,
you can literally use it. Like, fuck it. Like, it'll still die. I'm not going to die to it because my armor's too strong or whatever. Like, I'm using this greatsword literally because it looks really cool. I do the same thing. Like, fashion hunting is definitely the end game of pretty much every Monster Hunter game at this point. Like, the way you look matters so much because you put it together yourself. That's like your individuality showing through in a game, like how you actually look.
Just like.
So interestingly enough, so the last weapons to be introduced were the Charge Blade and the Insect Glaive, and they didn't come until the 4th gen. So Monster Hunter 4U on the Nintendo 3DS. Those two weapons are complicated as hell, but they are so fucking satisfying. Like Insect Glaive, literally you fly through the air when you're fighting, and like you're very airborne. So a lot of the attacks that like hit the ground, and like, you know, most monsters are grounded, and they do a lot of things that like sweep the ground and shoot at the ground. But like the Insect Glaive can jump over all of that and just completely bypass a lot of the damage that normal people go through.
It's cool. It's like if you took the idea of a Final Fantasy Dragoon.
Yes.
Like a turn-based game Dragoon, but you know what the Dragoon does. But you put that into an action game, and that's what the Insect Glaive is, which I think is pretty cool.
It's really cool. You get to jump, and you also have like this little bug that hits the monster, and like it will fight with you and stuff, and it deals damage. You can choose if you want the bug to be like a poison bug or a paralysis bug or an exploding bug. Like they can do all different types of shit, inflict certain statuses on monsters, and have certain elements. Very complex weapon, but it's very satisfying once you get to learn it, and it makes you feel safe. It can't block, but it can jump, and that is like in Monster Hunter is huge, just because of spacing reasons. And speaking of spacing, so a big part of Monster Hunter, a lot of people I know, some people played the game for a brief period, and like it's pretty difficult overall to get into. I think Monster Hunter has like a pretty meaty learning curve. Like there is a learning curve too, because the weapons, they all feel completely different, and monsters, you have to learn their patterns, right? Like you have to learn, like, he's about to do this attack, and you can tell because every monster kind of has like a little prequel to whatever attack they're about to do that lets you know, okay, holy shit, he's about to shoot a fireball. Like you can kind of tell, but it takes a while before you get used to that. And so a big part of
the game's not initially snappy, right? Like if you turn on Kingdom Hearts, the combat's like snappy right away. Like whereas a Monster Hunter, especially depending on what weapon you pick, it's not really snappy. It takes a bit for you to really get a feel for the weapon. Like I told people when I was streaming it, like there's 14 weapons in Monster Hunter and they all play so differently that if you tried Monster Hunter and think you don't like it, you might not know, like you might like it and not know you like it because you might have just tried the wrong weapon out of 14.
If somebody picks up Greatsword and they feel like, oh, I feel so sluggish and slow, you're playing Greatsword. That's like one of the slowest moving weapons in the game. But then if they switch to dual blades, they might start ripping shit apart and be like, I love this. Like this mobility.
Like this game is fucking sick.
Yeah, some people like, it's not that you don't like Monster Hunter. It might just be that you don't like the weapon that you chose and you just need to find a weapon for you. That changes everything. Like if Lance was the only weapon, I would not play Monster Hunter. Like
me neither.
If everything was a Lance, I would not fucking touch the game. It's like,
and the game makes all the weapons available. Like when you start the game, you get all 14 weapons, like a shitty version of all 14, but it doesn't it's not like you start the game and you got to do the first 10 missions with a Lance before you can unlock a gun.
Right. That will turn a lot of people
You can just use whatever. So you can try all the weapons, but you gotta fuck around with them.
Yeah, you do. You have to
figure out which one that you like, and it does make it a bit harder to get into completely new.
And they all have different like commands too. Like Monster Hunter is a game where you just have to literally know, and they have little guides and stuff in the game, but you have to know what buttons to press to do certain things. So like every weapon will have like, oh, if you press triangle and circle, I'm speaking on like PlayStation controller, but if you press triangle and circle together, it'll do a move. And if you press just circle by itself, it'll do a move. If you press just triangle, it'll do a move. So like, there's all different types of like moves that every weapon might have, and they do different things when you press those buttons. And some weapons like Insect Glaive have button combinations that no other weapon has. Like nothing else has this combination of buttons. But it does something special, like the jump command. Like no other weapon presses those two buttons to do jump, but It's really cool how like unique every weapon literally feels like you're playing a different game. Like you might be able to beat a monster really easily with a sword and shield, but then you try to fight it with like a hammer, for example, something that hits a little slower and can't block, and it might make the fight way different. It could be easier or worse, but it completely changes the way everything feels when you pick up a different weapon.
Yeah, outside of greatsword and hammer, I'm like really comfortable fighting any monster with greatsword or hammer.
Yeah.
But if I try some of the other weapons that I kind of like switch axe, I like switch axe a lot, but I'm not comfortable with it. So a lot of times I'll go into a hunt if I use switch axe and not really contribute as much as I'd like to because I'm just not.
Yeah, it's not your main thing. It's not kind of how I feel. Certain weapons that I use, I do not feel as comfortable with them. Like I started recently playing with the sword and shield in Rise, and I used to play sword and shield way back in the day, like I said, but I mostly play longsword now. I play like great sword and the light bow gun, things like that a lot. So when I pick up the sword and shield, I'm not going to be as big of a contributing factor. Whereas when people see me with the light bow gun on a quest, they just know like I'm about to fuck shit up because that weapon is one, it's OP as fuck. Like it's pretty much like the meta of the game. Like the light bow gun is one of the most powerful weapons in the game. The bow is the most powerful weapon in the game for weird reasons. But it changes every monster hunter, like what weapon is like, or what weapons are at the top of the food chain. But the guns are like, they are typically repeat offenders. Let's just call it that. And nothing feels different in Monster Hunter than like gunning. Like using a melee weapon like a sword, a lance, a gun lance, hammer, greatsword, inside glaive, whatever. Those weapons feel like you have to get up against the monster to actually deal damage. You have to get up close and personal. So if there's a big ass dragon, and you have a greatsword, guess what? You got to go out there and fucking actually hit that thing in the head to deal damage. The guns,
you got to smell his breath.
The guns don't really play by those rules. They just kind of sit far back and shoot, and they fuck shit up. And you would think that there would be like some kind of balancing act that they did to like make it where guns. But Capcom is not known for balancing, right, Kenny? They're not exactly.
Hell no. They're the same people that made Akuma.
Or Seth.
You can't be known for balance and make Akuma. Like those two things don't go together. They made Akuma.
Is Akuma that broken in Street Fighter?
Yes. There's not a game he's in that he's not fucked up. I mean, he's not that good in the Marvel games, actually.
Yeah.
But in the normal Street Fighter games,
he's outrageous. His thing is, their thought of we balance them is that he has less HP than most other.
I guess that's what they thought with the guns too. The guns have less HP.
Oh, that's true.
Every time, listen, if Capcom is in charge of a game and they tell you a thing has less HP, just know that thing is broken.
It's going to be fucking broken.
That less HP doesn't mean a damn thing.
Yeah, now that you say that, it kind of makes sense too. Like a lot of the things that have quote unquote less HP, like, oh, don't get hit. Like, yeah, well, it does so much more damage over time. DPS, damage per second.
Even fair.
Guns have a really high DPS because they can just keep shooting a monster from a distance and never actually get hit, especially once you realize all the monster's patterns. It's really hard to get hit. And they usually can take at least one attack before they die.
And you're further away from them. So you have less chances to get hit.
Yeah, it's just overall, like the way the game is set up, it just kind of contributes to guns having a much easier time at killing and just not getting hit than anything else.
I think the guns I think the idea of having the game's cool. Like the guns and the bow. There should be a ranged weapon, but I've only played this one really, and sometimes you go into a game and you just feel depressed when the guy using the light bow gun can just do everything.
I can cut the tail off, which
you can cut the tail off and stun the monster
and sleep it
and like stagger it and like put it to sleep if it fucking wants to. Like, it just does everything, and it does it from way back here.
I can break all the monster parts. Like you have to try to break the back with a greatsword. Good luck with that. I can just literally aim at the back and like it's broke.
And it just gets depressing because you're like, I'm out here like dodging the fucking tail swipes and shit and like trying to get up in there.
You're in the trenches.
And I'm sitting there and I gotta hold my sword back behind my head for 3 seconds, like before I can smack it. And then the whole time I'm doing that, I'm just seeing red lights coming from behind my fucking head.
Just me lasering the shit out of the monster, just shooting the hell out of it.
And then I'm like, what the fuck?
Like why will I even try? Yeah.
The guns, I think they're cool, but at least for me, they can sometimes depress the other players. It's like, man,
make you feel, especially don't even get me started on what happens if you have a team of gunners, because that shit is bad. Like, you want to talk about some meta breaking nonsense. Like, when there are multiple people on a quest and they're just using the gun, it just, monsters sometimes literally don't stand a chance. The early Monster Hunter games, you could literally flinch lock monsters. They could not move. You would start shooting them with 4 people and they literally could not move.
Man, I remember I got into a hunt one time. I think it was a Zenogre hunt. And Zenogre gives me a bit of trouble on Greatsword because one thing I always like going for the tail because it's just satisfying to cut the tail off. And Zenogre's tail is pretty tough to cut off. Like, it's got really bad hit
Every
zones.
monster has different hit zone. Yeah, it's not a good one.
And so in general, like, Zenogre's fight patterns kind of mess me up a bit. Like, he's one of the monsters that give me a bit more trouble. Like, I fought harder challenge rating monsters that are easier to me than Zenogre.
So what would be your? Oh, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Well, just real quick. Wrap up this quick story. I remember I went into a Zenogre fight one time with our friend Medina, and he uses a bow, and like, we killed him in like 4 minutes or something.
Yep, it was 4 minutes.
And I usually take like 10 minutes to kill a Zenogre. Now, I get there's 2 of us, but like we said earlier, their health is higher. But we killed that Zenogre so fast, and it wasn't even hard. I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, what did you do? And he was like, oh, dude, he's like, I'm the Zenogre killer. Like, he just like,
yeah, the bow is OP as fuck.
It was crazy. I couldn't believe how easy that Zenogre fight was. I was like, man, this is wild.
Speaking of like certain like specific monsters, so like, I was gonna say, what is like the hardest monster that you fought in Rise? Because like Rise is the main one.
In Rise, it would have to be Velstrax.
Yep, I agree.
The most recent monster added. Velstrax, I think, is the hardest monster in the game. And then for me personally, the second hardest is Basil Juice, whatever the fuck his name is.
That makes sense because he's like anti Greatsword. Like, the whole armoring through moves does not work too well against those explosives on the ground.
I'll armor through a move and fuck your day up, but for Basil Juice, I'll armor through a move and die because like I'll get hit by like 2 explosions and then he'll hit me with his fucking head or something. I'm just like, oh
yeah. The play style of the Greatsword is to like literally you armor through moves, but you still take damage, and then you deal damage based on how much you took. So it's kind of like a tit for tat. Like, oh, you hit me, and now I don't get knocked down, but now my next hit is going to be stronger because the monster hit me while I was charging up. Yeah, and that play style is actually really bad against this one bomb fucking pigeon thing that like it just drops a bunch of explosives, and when you armor through them, you actually die because you take so many hits at once. It's like, oh yeah, damn, you just killed me.
He fucks me up. I remember a couple times I'm doing hunts with my friends, and like I was like, oh, I'm dead. And they're like, you're dead? I'm like, yeah. It's all right. Come on, let's go. We got him. Then I'll go in and I'll die again. They're like, yo. I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna die again. I promise.
Like, what is going on?
They're like, what are you doing? Because I don't. Yeah. I typically still die because I'm all like I like being in the fucking mix.
Yeah, you're aggressive. You can be any kind of Monster Hunter player you want. You are an aggressive player,
and I get in there. So like I can still die, but I've played the game so many hours, I rarely die.
Yeah, you don't die often.
But there's certain monsters like Basil Juice where like I'll still get fucked up.
Yeah,
like,
he's new too. He's literally was released at the end, like not the end of the game, but like he's in the latest content that was released for the game. So he's a relatively newer monster. You fought him less than every other monster in Rise probably. And his playstyle is literally counterproductive to the Greatsword's playstyle, which that's another thing is like Monster Hunter has that Pokemon aspect. Like monsters have weaknesses. They have like, not only do they have literally like this monster's weak to water or thunder or fire, but they also have weapon weaknesses, I would say too. Like some monsters are really good to fight with a gun because they might fly too much, and like or Insect Glaive might be really good because they jump in the air too much, and like okay, I can actually get him up there, but it might be really annoying to use dual blades on something that's in the air like 90% of the fight. Like that shit is annoying.
Yeah, and then there's like blunt weapons and sharp weapons like swords and hammers, and like some monsters will take more damage from a hammer than they will from a sword.
Yeah, like every hit zone has a different value on like blunt, range, and severing weapons, but it's really cool how they have all these different things that go into the damage formula and that contribute to your DPS. So how about we switch over to talk about the old Monster Hunter games, because I want to just kind of give people some history, because Monster Hunter is great now. Like if you've never played Monster Hunter, please start with Monster Hunter Rise or Monster Hunter World.
Yeah,
for me personally,
both of those games have high accolades. Man.
Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Rise. I don't recommend people start with the older ones, just because there's been so many improvements made in the last two like installments of the franchise that just completely dwarf everything that came before them, and like World and Rise just like really are the culmination of years and years of improvement.
Monster Hunter World is now. I didn't really play this one, but I have the internet, so I saw the effect it had on the internet.
Yeah.
And Monster Hunter, because I knew what Monster Hunter was for a long time, but I would say 90% of the people I knew didn't know what Monster Hunter was. Monster Hunter World was like the FF7 Ocarina of Time for Monster Hunter. Like I feel like Monster Hunter World put it on the map in a way where every fucking buddy.
It definitely made it mainstream for sure. Yeah, you're right about that. Like World definitely was the one that kind of like brought a lot of people together. And maybe that's because the online experience was like, amped up on the console, like it came out on multiple consoles. Whereas I think every previous Monster Hunter game was pretty much locked to one.
Like, yeah, I think so.
Like if it was on PlayStation, it was only on PlayStation. It wasn't on Nintendo. If it was on Nintendo, it was only on that and not on anywhere else. Monster Hunter World actually was on the PC, the Xbox, and the PlayStation. So it was like literally available for more people to play. And then on top of that, the online experience, because, PC, Xbox, and PlayStation have like really insane online experience. So that kind of also contributed to it becoming so mainstream. And then the graphics, of course, like Monster Hunter World is the first game that just the graphics. And you just go back and look at some of those old Monster Hunter games on PSP and see the textures and things, and then look at Monster Hunter World, and for people who are like graphics whores, it's very pleasing to your eyes to like watch.
It's a pretty fucking game.
It's very, very good looking. The monsters that you've seen in the PSP and the 3DS, seeing them in these really high res textures and just the scales, the saliva, the teeth, seeing all of it look super realistic, or as realistic as, games can get right now, it's just amazing. But it came a long way. So the first Monster Hunter game I ever played was the one on PSP, is the first one. And I was a teenager when I first started playing it. That game, as fun as it was, I used to spend like literally 16 hours a day playing it with my friends on the steps, and we would play in any condition, just like we did Yu-Gi-Oh! We would play in the cold. It would be fucking a heat wave. We didn't care. We would just play on the steps. We would all have chargers connected to my one friend's porch, and we would just like sit there and play it for hours. And the PSP's layout was so bad for Monster Hunter because the way you controlled your character, like for movement, was on the left, like the left analog stick, but then also for some strange fucking reason, the camera control was also on the left. So in order to move the camera and your character, it was just not ergonomic at all. Like you had to
was
like
the camera the D-pad?
It was the D-pad, but it was also like a little there was like a little knob thing, I feel like, that also moved the camera. Maybe it was just a D-pad, because I don't even remember.
Yeah, because there was the nub. There was like the little nub. Because I remember playing Birth by Sleep on the PSP.
Yeah, it was
Birth by Sleep, and you got that shitty little fucking nub to play with.
So yeah, it was, you had to move the camera with like the directional pad, which was also on the same side as how you move your character. So you had to do like this weird claw fucking thing with your index finger and your thumb to like play the game essentially. It was really bad, and it did not contribute to it made it where your fingers felt more prone to carpal tunnel and arthritis. Let's just say that. It definitely after a while, after playing for hours with the claw, as they call it, like it's literally called the claw on Reddit. Like if you ever hear people talk about the claw, like that's what they're talking about. It was really painful after a while. Like your fingers are not supposed to fucking be in this C shape for hours on end. Like, and you're in these intense
situations. People
play
Melee that way.
Yeah, I know. I never got into maybe I'll become better if I ever try that. But yeah, so the old games, like really bad controls. Camera angles were atrocious. And one of the funnier things that people talk about with the older games is the hitboxes. Some of the monsters just had some really plessy-off, like some really bullshit hitboxes. Like you'll be so far away from a monster and it'll do like a tail whip, and your character will just get fucking hit for like half their HP across the screen. It's like, I wasn't even near that fucking thing. Like what? Or like the plessy-off had like a shoulder check. Like he would do like a fucking like a thing where he kind of like moves back a little bit and then like charges forward just slightly, but it will hit you from across the stage. Like you're just nowhere near it, and it'll hit you and take like literally 90% of your HP. It's like, what the fuck? Like this glitchy ass game, like get out of here. I used to hate that. We used to all talk about how bad plessy offs hitbox is.
That's fucking great. It's funny because I know I think Monster Hunter Rise, for the most part, its hitboxes are pretty damn good.
Yeah, for the most part.
But there's some people I play with who, no matter what happens and what they get hit by, they're like, man, these fucking hitboxes, man.
The Johns.
And I'm sitting there like, I don't know, man. I think you just got hit.
Yeah, I think that fireball just actually fucking hit you because you were
there.
Like you just happened to be in that spot.
Like sometimes I think you're just there. Like you're just getting mad at nothing.
Yeah, no, I definitely know what you mean. They just say like, oh, how the fuck that hit me? Like, you know how that fuck that hit you. You were greedy.
Yeah, you know how the fuck that hit you.
You know exactly how it hit you. You were being greedy. You got too close, and he fucking hip checked you. Like, you know what happened. So
another thing that's funny is because I'm guessing with each Monster Hunter, maybe not every Monster Hunter, but they add new moves to the monsters.
They do,
right?
They do.
And so I know that I was playing with one of my friends, and they played like every Monster Hunter, and they would always make fun of me for dying to Zenogre, right? And then they were fighting Zenogre one time, and Zenogre, I guess, has this new move where he turns around, like 180 hits you, and like he turns around and like pounces behind him or something like that. And they were getting really mad because they were like, the whole meta for fighting Zenogre was to fight him this way, but now they gave him a move to hit you in that spot.
And yeah, like usually monsters will have a blind spot.
I don't know what to tell you, man.
Yeah, like you got to get fucking better. Get better.
But it was fun because like she's really cool. She's really cool, but it was funny because she was always making fun of me for dying to Zenogre. Yep. She died to Zenogre. I was like, yes.
Yeah, that's what you get, talking shit. And Monster Hunter is a very humbling game. Like that game, like I am somewhat of a Monster Hunter elitist. Like I played every one of them except Monster Hunter Tri, which had the underwater shit that I just refused to go through. But I played every Monster Hunter game except one, and I love them all for whatever reason. And I just know like there's definitely a community of people who are always like, oh, just don't get hit. Like that's not like unless you're a speedrunner, and even they do thousands and thousands of runs before they get it right. Unless you're a speedrunner, like getting hit is just part of the game. Like you're gonna get hit. Your thing is to like improve upon how often you get hit. Like, but you're gonna get hit and you are gonna die too. I don't give a fuck who you are. I've never played with someone who never died. That's just not a thing. Like everyone dies. Everyone has a bad day where they just get got. Sometimes you get got a couple times. Sometimes you go on a couple hunts, and for some reason today, the monsters are just fucking you up, and you're like, you know what, guys, I'm gonna log off for the day because I'm pulling the team back. Like I'm just not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Some people just have monsters that are there. Like we have a friend who just always dies to Tiger X.
He can't deal. He can't.
He always dies to Tigrex.
Something about that monster is just scary to him, I think. Like when he sees it charging. So Tigrex is literally like a fucking fusion between an actual Tyrannosaurus Rex and like a tiger. And it has these like this huge fucking wingspan. When it starts walking forward, it's just like scary as hell. It's very intimidating. It's a very intimidating monster. And he's like when it charges at him, I think he just freezes up, like literally, because he uses the bow. We're talking about the same person, right?
Yeah. We're talking about the same person.
Okay.
Yeah.
He uses the bow, which doesn't exactly have like the best way to get away from a monster if it's too close already. So like once the monster closes the distance, it's just lights out. And range weapons can't take damage really. So
that is like we said, they have lower health.
Yeah, range weapons have lower health, but for the most part, like range weapon players don't get hit. So, you know, it kind of helps. It's whatever. But certain monsters just have people's numbers. I have monsters that I don't like to fight, but overall, like I'm pretty good against all of them. But something like Glavenus, for example, I don't like fighting that monster. I don't know. It's something about its long ass body. It just does something to me where I can't stand fighting it. But
I'm gonna look up a picture of it. I've never seen it.
Glavenus.
Yeah, I'll spell this correctly.
Yeah, he looks like it's like a T-Rex, but it's like has five. It's like Agenaf. It's like a cooler version of Agenaf.
He does look pretty cool. I like his tail. His tail's dope as shit.
So his tail is actually a great sword.
I can look like his tail looks like a great sword.
Yeah, and he wields it like a fucking sword, which is really cool. And in World or Iceborne, they brought out a version of him that his tail is a long sword. It's a green version of him, and it's like acidic Glavenus. But yeah, they have some really cool, but I don't like fighting them like that. My point is that I don't like this monster is just one of those that I just really,
man, he looks dope as fuck though. They got to add him to Rise.
Oh, I think that Rise's expansion is going to have 40 plus monsters because there's literally, I can name 40 monsters that are not in it. So I'm expecting the expansion for Rise to be insane. Like I can't wait.
Yo, this shit looks. I'm looking at like all his different versions in different games. He looks sick as fuck.
Yeah, Glavenus is really cool. I guess I didn't give my what my most difficult monster is to fight in like the franchise, and I want to say it's tied between two different monsters. So as far as most difficult fights, Fatalis in the older games is really difficult. Even in World, Fatalis, he's like, kind of like the last boss or whatever. A lot of, if you play Monster Hunter, Fatalis. He's pretty difficult. But then fucking Monster Hunter World Behemoth, the co-op between like Final Fantasy 14 and Monster Hunter is really difficult. Like, I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know if they were like, we got to give Final Fantasy its props or whatever the fuck went on. But when they brought Behemoth into Monster Hunter, that specifically the tempered Behemoth, like they call it Extremeth, that fucking fight is so difficult. And the reason it is difficult is because it has a one-hit kill move that like wipes out your entire party if you don't do a certain thing. So in Monster Hunter games, usually the only way to fail a quest is if you die 3 times.
And that's shared between the party. Like if I never die, but you die 3 times, we all fail.
Yeah. So like somebody can fuck it up for everybody. Like if one person just sucks or is just having a bad day, they can just literally fail the quest for the whole team, which is kind of like the thing where no one wants to be that guy. Everyone wants to like, carry your weight. Like you don't want to be the guy that's holding the party back or making you guys fail.
Yeah.
But the Behemoth
and you are playing with friends. So as long as your friends aren't assholes, it's still all fun.
Yeah. And sometimes you have friends who are assholes and it's still fun.
That's true.
I'm that friend.
That's true.
I'm the asshole and I'm still going to be fun. But
I mean, he said
it. But yeah, I mean, so Behemoth had this mechanic where like if you didn't get behind this little rock, it wiped out the entire party. Like everyone's life, and it didn't matter how much HP they had. It didn't matter if they were not behind this rock. Everyone you just that character died, and if 3 people were not behind it, like then those 3 people were died. Like
you lost the fight.
Yeah, and
did he do Meteor when he died?
He did actually.
Yes.
Yeah. So the mechanic that kills everybody is actually Meteor. It's called the Ecliptic Meteor. He does it after every area he changes. So like he starts off in one area when you fight him. It's like the 4 of you guys. He starts off in one area. And then every time he changes area, he does Ecliptic Meteor. So what you have to do is you have to get behind a comet. And he drops comets throughout the fight that just kind of, they fall in like 2 or 3 spots throughout the fight. Now the problem with the comets is that they can actually break. Like, so if he's near them and he starts attacking, you need to like draw him away from the comets, because if he keeps attacking in an area, they will break and you guys will not have a point to go to survive the meteor. But he does the meteor like 5 times during the entire fight, because every time he switches area, he does it. And it just has a chance to end the mission. So you could be fighting him for fucking 25 minutes and you guys are doing really well. And at the very end, when he actually dies, he does it again. Like a final, in Final Fantasy, he actually does it that way too. When you kill him, you can fail it at the very end. Like you can actually just fail the quest at the very end.
That's fucking tight. That's dope as fuck.
Luckily, that did not happen to me, but I know there are some good YouTube videos out there, some Behemoth compilations of just him fucking.
Somebody's had to have broken a keyboard or two.
There has been some. Behemoth has made people rage, and also because the Monster Hunter community was not used to like the idea of a monster that had a DPS check, right? Like he literally killed the whole party if you guys didn't do enough damage in a certain area. Like when he got to the 3rd area, if you didn't do enough damage by this point, your entire party got wiped out. So that concept, that concept was just not a Monster Hunter thing. Like people who play Monster Hunter were like, this is bullshit. What is this? Like, why do I have to do that? Why can't I play safe? Because some people are like, I'm just going to like cheese them out and use a lance. And I'm just going to stand there and like block everything and like hit him every like 3 minutes. Like, okay, you can try that. And if you do that, he will just wipe you out because of the DPS check. So it's really cool how they designed it, but it's also really fucking ignorant.
Man.
Yep. So those are like the 2 most difficult for me.
Don't be a bitch. Get up there and smell his breath.
Exactly. You got to get up close and personal. But yeah, the old Monster Hunter games, they come a long way. They used to have load screens when you went to a different area. Like that shit.
I remember that.
People who lie to me and say like, "Oh, the old games were so much better." Like, just stop. Like the old games were good for what they were, like for their time, right? Like they were great for their time. I loved them. I grew up on them. But you can't sit here and try to tell me that the old games were better than Monster Hunter Rise. Like
every area was a load screen. Every
single time you went to a new area in the older game, you had to wait probably 20 seconds for a load screen. Like, which, that that's annoying on its own. But then imagine you're fighting a monster and you get fucking hit off the area. Like sometimes the monster will hit you and areas have like an edge where if you touch the edge, you go to the next area. So a Rathalos can shoot a fireball at you and you fucking get flipped into area 4 now. And now you have to wait 20 seconds before you are back on screen. And then you have to wait another 20 seconds to get back in the area with the Rathalos. It was really obnoxious. Like that shit was bad. That shit was so bad. The terrible hitbox is like
it was like that until World, right?
Yes. Yeah.
World was the first game.
World was the first like game where when you loaded into a map, like that was it. No more loading for the rest of the quest. Like that was like once you load it, you were good to go. You could hunt as much as you want. Also, it introduced the concept of like if you killed all the monsters on the map, new monsters would actually appear, like expeditions. Like that. Like it introduced that concept for real. I mean, they had expeditions, I guess, in like the older ones, but again, the whole loading the zones and all that stuff just made it not as realistic. Like it was really cool in World when you would kill a Raytheon and like, okay, Rathalos just showed up. Like, holy shit, he wasn't even on the map and he flew into the map. Like that was such a cool idea.
That is
like
cool.
he killed his wife and
I liked in Rise, like the expeditions were fun. I remember just spending a good hour, 2 hours on each map expedition, just exploring the map.
Yeah.
And just kind of running around and just kind of being into it. And I don't know. Yeah, it's just fun.
Learning the maps is fun. I mean, like literally finding, because you can find shortcuts. You can find endemic life, like little shit that's alive that like helps you out if you capture it. Like, oh, there might be a little bug on the ground that if you put it
when it's just zones.
Yeah. Like,
when it's just like an individual, like this is this circle, this is this square, this is this triangle. It's like, whatever.
Yeah. Also, the maps, like, Monster Hunter maps are a problem for sure in Monster Hunter games in general. But the maps in the older games were really sometimes hard to follow for people. Like they can you will look at like, okay, I'm in area 7. I want to get to area 3, but like it doesn't really look correct for the human eye, like how I get to this area. So it can take some time. And with all the low screens, it can become very frustrating for people to just find out where a monster went. Like you just want to hunt the monster. Like you're not trying to exactly fucking go on map quest here. Like you just want to hunt. And so
some of the older games that I haven't played, which is basically all of them, I've heard a lot of good things about them and I want to try them. Like I know there's some that got a remaster on the Switch, right? I think it's the 3DS ones. Really? Got a remaster on the Switch.
Oh yeah. Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. Yes, that game is good. It's a good game.
I heard that game is amazing and I really want to play it and just like feel it out, but there's some little things where I just don't know if I feel like dealing with. Like, I don't know if I feel like dealing with. I don't know if I can go back and deal with the load screen.
Because it's not just a graphics thing, right? Like, I'm a person who's a.
I don't care about graphics. Yeah. I'll play SNES games all day.
Yeah, you're a Nintendo fanboy, so you don't like graphics are not exactly the biggest thing. And I played World. I played World for over 1,000 hours. Like, if I load up my World on PS4, I have, I think, 1,300 hours or something crazy, like just way over 1,000 hours I have. And that game looks amazing. But then when Rise came out, like a lot of people were bitching about, oh, the graphics are going down, like, cause it's Nintendo and I'm not going to play it and all that. But like the game is actually just amazing. It's World, but better. Like it literally improved upon things that World introduced, which is natural. And even though the graphics are like, oh, they're not as good, they're still good fucking graphics for Monster Hunter. Like they're good graphics. Like they're not, they're not god awful PS2 graphics, which I see a lot of people try to say like Monster Hunter Rise has PS. Like there's no Monster Hunter Rise could not run on PlayStation 2. Like that is just not a thing. Like it
would have load screen. First of all, it wouldn't look as good, and it would have load screens.
Yeah, there's no way. Like the maps are huge in Rise. Once you load into the map, like that's it. And Rise has insanely fast load times. Like it does not take long to load into a map once, and then you're in the map, and that's it. Like it has a pretty, like Monster Hunter World has atrocious, and rightfully so, because back then, like the graphics being as high as they were, rendering all of those maps, those huge maps, the load screens of Monster Hunter World were really, really bad. So much so that I even bought a PlayStation Pro and a solid state drive just to
improve it,
just to make it go from like the load screen taking 1 minute and 30 seconds to it taking like 17 seconds. Like that was like such a big improvement. And that is a big improvement, but it's still just like, damn, I had to spend, I think I spent like $400 or $500 just for Monster Hunter. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to play Generations Ultimate because I've heard nothing but great things about it. But at the same time, like another
You're
thing
going backwards, yeah.
Yeah. And it's not, like I said, has nothing to do with the graphics. It's more so just the gameplay. Like
it's just the quality of life improvements. They like, for example, in the old games, another thing, and I'm just thinking about this now, but you can't switch your weapon once you're in a quest. So like whatever you go into a quest with in the old games, you were locked into that weapon. So if you wanted to kill 3 different monsters, you would be forced to keep using your greatsword or your longsword or your light bowgun, like the entire quest, which is not ideal for fighting multiple monsters because they all have different, like we said, they have different weaknesses and shit. So if I want to use a gun against this guy, but I want to use a longsword against this guy, you have to like completely leave the quest, like completely like all the way out to do that. And in World and Rise, you can literally switch a weapon mid quest. You can cook mid quest, which raises your health and stamina and your stats. That like little things like that, like those quality of life improvements just make the game so much funner.
Yeah, the wire bug too.
Oh god,
Monster Hunter, I don't think they can go back, man. The next Monster Hunter needs to have some sort of wire bug mechanic because what it adds to movement and overall gameplay,
it turns
it's so fun.
You're Spider-Man, like everyone, like you're literally Spider-Man. You can literally get on top of any mountain, any type of cliff. You can jump on top of the monster. Like you can jump up in the air.
It feels so good, man. It feels so good moving with the wire bug.
I don't. That's so for me. I think the wire bug, like in a weird way, ruined Monster Hunter for me because I think it's that good. Like it literally feels so good that I can't imagine going back to not having that mobility at my fingertips. Like
it's one of the things that scares me about playing World. World is a game I definitely do want to go. Like it's highest on my list for Monster Hunter games I want to go back and play.
Yeah.
But even as great as World is, the simple not having a wire bug is
the wire bug changed the game. Like the mobility of it. Also the way they fuse like weapon attacks are like mixed, like they're literally a part of the wire bug. It's kind of hard to go backwards with the wire bug. I feel like I don't know what they'll ever do without it. I don't know. I mean, I'll play Monster Hunter no matter what. Like if they take it away from the next game, I'm still going to play it, but it would definitely suck because the feeling of just being able to literally go all the way into the sky at any point, like I can just jump up several times and hang out there and like.
It's one of those things where let's say the next Monster Hunter doesn't have a wire bug. But let's say in general, its normal movement is better than every previous Monster Hunter. The fact that it doesn't have the wire bug would still mean it's a con in terms of movement.
Yeah,
right.
I can't compare. There's no
to the one that came before it.
There's nothing that compares to the wire bug. The movement on that thing is so insane. It makes me like super happy just thinking about how far the game has come. Just on the wire bug alone, because it literally turns your character into Spider-Man, and I love Spider-Man personally. Like I fucking love Spider-Man. So
just dope.
Yeah, I don't agree with people.
The next Marvel movie I'm watching tonight is Homecoming.
Nice.
I'm moving through them. I'm almost done, man. I'm almost done them all.
All right. Well, then when you get done now, we can definitely have our discussion about these Marvel Cinematic Universe.
We're not going to stay on this. I just want to real quick get this out because me and Frazier were talking about Vin Diesel earlier for a funny reason. But did you know that Vin Diesel was the voice actor for Groot in Guardians of the Galaxy?
I think I did randomly know that little tidbit. Like.
So even though I'm going through all the Marvel movies now,
I feel like
I've seen Guardians of the Galaxy a bunch of times. I like that movie a lot. But in going through it this time, I paid attention to the credits, and it was like Vin Diesel as Groot, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, like because why does he need to do that? Like,
yeah, dude, he's got one voice. My question is, why did Marvel pay that much money?
Right.
For Groot, like I could have been Groot.
You
guys did not need to pay Vin Diesel money for Groot. Like that shit is crazy.
Yeah, that's wild. That's absolutely wild. I feel like I heard that somewhere. That's good. Well, we'll definitely have our MCU episode.
Yeah, I'm getting close to the end. But anyway,
yeah. But yeah, as for Monster Hunter, it's come a long way. It's been continuous improvement since the PSP days, the dregs, and now
would you say? Not counting World and Rise, what's your favorite Monster Hunter? Before World and Rise, what one do you look back on most fondly?
I personally love the new 3DS, like Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, which, I played the Japanese version, so it was called Monster Hunter Cross and Monster Hunter Double Cross. Those are my favorite outside of the newer ones that have like no load screens and all that stuff. Like,
yeah.
Because those ones had Hunter arts, which were, I thought, so fucking cool. Like your characters literally got like these special moves, like their finishing moves, and they would get like a meter that builds up and stuff to access them. They just felt like some other shit. Like it turned Monster Hunter into like Kingdom Hearts. Like it was very flashy.
Yeah, that's sick.
It was very, very flashy. Like there would be some moves, like the longsword would have like a fucking move where you would like go past the monster really quick, and then all of these slashes will happen like an after effect type of thing, which they brought back in Rise, but it used to look insane back in the double cross days. It has another move where like your character makes a circle with the long sword in the air. Like they just kind of like draw a circle with their sword really slow. And if a monster attacks you at any point, you deal like a fucking shit ton of damage because they tried to like do something to you. So it's like if you cross this fucking circle, you die. Like it was that kind of. It was really cool. They had a lot of flashy. It's the most flashy Monster Hunter game. Next to Rise now, which has the most flash. But back then, that nothing really compared to that feeling. And also, for me, I started to spread the sickness of Monster Hunter and like get my friends into it with those games. Like I introduced a couple friends to it, and they love Monster Hunter now because of those games. So I have very fond memories of the 3DS versions of Monster Hunter, and just the controls being so much better than the PSP. Because I cannot vouch for the PSP. As fun as it was back then, like I had a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, but
you don't want to go back.
I don't want to go back. I just don't want to go. Like I don't want to go back to bad hitboxes, load screens, one weapon per hunt, like all types of like bad camera angles, like shit like that. I don't want to go back to that. So Double Cross has very minimal issues. Like Generations Ultimate, like that whole series on the 3DS has very, very minimal issues for me. And they had the other good thing is that those games had a huge monster pool. So let me not act like Rise is like without fault, right? Like we're praising Rise. Rise is definitely a great game. It's also my favorite Monster Hunter game, but pretty much every Monster Hunter game that comes out is better than the last one. So in a way, like every time a new one comes out, it's always my favorite Monster Hunter game. Like World was my favorite, and then Rise happened, and then Rise is like an improvement on World. So I love Rise more. But the issue with Rise, and the reason why a lot of people are not playing Rise as much anymore, is because it doesn't have enough monsters to kind of keep you engaged. And they're saving them, like they're saving them for an expansion. But it is.
We assume because I don't think Dave said anything, but I know, like I said, Monster Hunter World was gigantic. Everybody was talking about it and playing it. I knew so many people that played it that didn't even know what Monster Hunter was before.
Right.
That was on World, and then on top of that, when the Iceborne expansion came out, that was like they added a game in the game.
They literally doubled the amount of monsters.
Oh, so much shit.
But and so not to shit on Rise, like World had the same issue. Like people have selective memory. World only had, I think, 29 monsters when it launched. It didn't have a lot. Like it had under 30 or like exactly 30 monsters at launch. And so it also had the same issue where World kind of fizzled out really quick. Like it was fun. You played it, you fought all the monsters, you got your armor, stuff like that. But then it kind of like had a period where there wasn't much to do because you just like, I fought everything so many times. I don't want to keep fighting these monsters. The good thing is about World is that Iceborne came out like pretty decently, like not too long afterwards, after the launch of after World. So, you know, a year and some change after World came out in 2018, like Iceborne came out, and it revitalized the game. The roster was like literally, like we said, it was doubled. But World did have one thing that I will give it over Rise, and that's the content that came out on a weekly basis, like the event quest and things like that, was just way better.
The weekly quest and Rise haven't, because like I haven't played Rise really in a bit, but it's
been months for us. I feel like haven't played in over a month.
And I was looking forward to the weekly quest, but they don't really do anything.
Yeah, like you get like a pair of sunglasses this week. Like that's not enough to make me turn my Switch back on for that game. Like especially with how you talked about. There's so many games to play now.
Yes,
like the library of a game.
Before Rise came out, me and you spent 200 hours on Bravely Default 2.
Yep. We played
Bravely Default 2 up until Rise came out.
The day it came out, we stopped playing Bravely.
So like, and then there's other games that are still coming out, that have come out, that will come out. So your time is competitive for what game there is to play.
Yeah.
And right now, like, there's not really a reason for me to turn Rise on. I'm excited for when they add like an Iceborne.
When they add the expansion, we are right back on that shit. 16 hours a day, no question, no like. I'm no lifing it the second they release the expansion. But for right now, the weekly quests just don't do it. Whereas in World, the weekly quest would be like, here's a Final Fantasy collab where literally you're fighting Behemoth. Here's what's that other game that had the Great Lesson or whatever it's called?
Great Lesson?
Yeah, I forget what it's called, but there's like some other game that had a big.
The Witcher?
The Witcher. They had a Witcher collab where you fight the Great Lesson, like you fight some tree demon spirit shit. They had another one where it was a Resident Evil collab. Because Capcom, they have Devil May Cry collabs. Like they had stuff that literally I was like, damn, I haven't played Monster Hunter in like 2 weeks, but this new collab that's coming out, like me and all my boys would just hop back on that shit.
Yeah.
Like, and we would be playing like for that week, we would be playing so much because the collab just
imagine if like, I don't know, you just they added Nemesis.
Yes,
like,
that would be cool.
Imagine if like
or they added Mega Man bosses.
Week, they're like, here you go, fight Nemesis. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, I would be on it. I would be on it 100%. I mean, that like if they do another Final Fantasy collab, right? Like I'm there. Like
there's infinite monsters that could add from Final Fantasy. I imagine that's a bit harder because it's outside of Capcom, but but Capcom has enough IPs.
They do.
They could add like a Devil May Cry boss.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like how sick
there's a lot for them to draw from, and there's tons of monsters that are not in Rise right now. So between the expansion and stuff, they have a lot that they can play around with, and I'm hoping that they will. But for right now, Rise's biggest issue is that the roster, it's a little lacking in like variety. It gets to a point where you just feel like you're fighting the same monsters over and over. Every Monster Hunter game has the, you fight the same monsters thing. It's very repetitive, but when your library of monsters is 80 as opposed to like 35,
it's different.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, if you could fight 100 monsters or 80 monsters or whatever, it's cool. Because when you're cycling through the monsters, right? Because also you want a large number of monsters that are hard because I mean, I could beat up Great Azuchi all like it's not fun for me to turn my game on and beat up Great Azuchi. Like,
no, it's not. That's like the first. That's like the first monster you fight in Rise. So like, it doesn't really do much to go back and beat that thing up, unless you just want to see how powerful your weapon hits, right? Like you kind of beat up on it. So I just want to quickly look up how many monsters were in Monster Hunter Double Cross or Generations Ultimate, as it's called in the US. So there were 129 total monsters in Double Cross. However, this is counting every like small monster as well. So I think the guy said that there were 90. I'm looking at a Game Facts thread, and I think that it says there are 94 large monsters in Double Cross. That's an insane amount of monsters.
Yeah.
Like 94 is wild. If that's accurate, like if there were actually 94 large monsters in Double Cross or Generations Ultimate, like that is actually insane.
That's what I need, man.
Yeah.
Let me get that.
So that adds to the variety. It makes the game not feel as repetitive because by default, Monster Hunter is a repetitive game. You are fighting the same thing over and over and over again to get the armor and to get the weapons and to get whatever you need. But then you don't need it to be repetitive in the sense that like there's only one good monster to fight because this monster just has like the best shit. The more monsters you add, the more variety you can have in your skills and your setups and all that. So yeah, but I have faith. I have faith in the expansion for Rise.
Yeah, because right now, I mean, they added Teostra, Kushala Daora, and Chameleos, and then Valstrax. Like they're all really fun to fight. Whereas before they got added, the biggest monster to fight was Narwa, and I mean she was like the only one, and I don't know, people got tired of fighting her. Yeah,
like it just wasn't it. All right, so that's pretty much our Monster Hunter discussion. We want to do a couple more segments this episode, so we want to talk about the Steam Deck that was announced, like a rival to the Nintendo Switch, or like, it looks very similar to Nintendo Switch at the very least, but I don't know if you guys heard about it. Steam, the company that pretty much hosts a ton of fucking games, like a library of games that you can purchase to play on PC, is releasing their own.
Steam can turn your PC into a console. Like some people don't like PC gaming because of it can be a little complicated. It can be a little tough to get into. Barrier of entry can be a little high, but through Steam, it made the barrier of entry a lot lower, and it kind of console-fied PC gaming and easing the access of them, and it made it a lot easier for people to get into PC gaming.
Yeah, like Steam is amazing. Like I can play. I remember wanting to play old Final Fantasy games, old PlayStation games. All that shit's on there. Like you can just go and pay for it, and you can play everything you wanted to play without having to own a PlayStation or whatever. So they're releasing a console, like, but it's basically a Switch because it can be docked. It's literally right. Like, isn't it literally the same thing in a way as the Switch?
From what I've heard, yeah, I heard it can be docked.
Yeah, I'm looking at specs right now, so
and it's portable.
I'll just read out some things about it. So it costs at base, like the base model is $400. So it's priced a bit above the Switch, but if you know about Steam's insane library of games, like okay. And there's a high end version that's 650, so it can get pretty expensive. Which to me, buying a game console for 650, like that's more expensive than the PS Pro. Like,
I would rather. So I'm cutting you off, but
yeah, it's more expensive than like the PS5 and like the new Xbox and stuff like that. So
yeah,
it's kind of like you could buy a laptop or a desktop.
So I'm not sold on the Steam Deck. I won't be getting one for a couple reasons. One, I think the price is really okay. Actually, number one, if you can type in Google, whoever you are, type in Google Steam Deck, right? And just look at it, look at the picture. Now, I want you to draw your eyes to the right side of the screen, okay? You got me? I want you to look at the buttons, the Y, the X, the A. I want you to look at the B button. Why is the B button is falling off the side of the console? The B button is sad as look at this. Look at that B button.
I'm looking at it now, and that's actually really like I'm doing exactly what you said. That's actually really funny. It's literally hanging off the fucking thing.
The B button is curved off the side of the console. Okay. So first of all, I don't know if that's going to be fixed on release, but
I hope so.
Right now, the button placement, when I'm looking at it, right, we got the right and left stick, cool, the D-pad, but like the way things are positioned, you can tell there's not enough room for what's going on. Then they got these two haptic pads, which I'm assuming are going to simulate like mouse, which should be fine. Haptic feedback has made a lot of improvements over the year. But my problem with the Steam Deck is that Steam has a huge library of games. Yes. A lot of those games, though, like a lot of like the keyboard mouse games are going to be very hard to play on this thing.
Right. Like this isn't going to make portable versions of those games any better, really.
Yeah. Like you're not going to want to play. What's that? You're not going to want to play Counter-Strike on this. Like the people that love Counter-Strike, they're not going to play Counter-Strike on this.
Right.
A lot of those like really mouse intensive games, I don't think you're going to really want to play on this. Now that said, this is really good for, this is really good for games that you would play like on console. Like, let's say you wanted to play Final Fantasy X. I don't think FF10 is on the Switch. But let's say you want to play games that aren't on the Switch.
It is.
Portably. The Steam Deck is good for that. But once again, it's $400 to $600. My other problem with it is this. Valve, now it could change. Valve has a horrible track record with supporting their hardware post-release. For example, they released the Steam console. They've released like a home console version of Steam before.
I've never even heard of this before.
Yeah, you can look it up. They released a Steam console, which basically did not go supported after the first year. And after release, it was basically, we all just found out it's just a gaming laptop in the disguise of a console box. And the Steam controller, look, if you look up the Steam controller, first of all, just look at it. You'll see the roots of why the B button is hanging off the side of the Steam Deck. The Steam controller just looks wonky as fuck, but also it just didn't get support post-release.
Yeah, that's scary to me. I don't like that. Like
a lot of Valve's hardware does not get supported post-release.
Yeah,
and that's what makes me scared of the Steam Deck.
So moving on to like the storage of this thing. So so the highest model has 512 gigs of storage, and then the base model has 64 gigs. I don't think so. The scary thing is like the base model having only 64 gigs is just not a lot at all. But I do see that it has removable storage, so there's that. So you could buy a base model and you could just put in an SD card, which I'm assuming most people will do, and you can get as much as the SD card allows. It has 16 gigs of RAM, which is really good, pretty standard.
Yeah.
16 gigs of RAM. So that should be pretty good for some intensive games that need a lot of like power and memory. And the display is 720 on the, like when you're playing in handheld. So the same as the Switch, the base Switch, 720.
I actually think that's better than the Switch on handheld. I don't know if I don't think handheld 720.
I thought it was 720. I thought that it was 1080 docked.
Maybe
I'm wrong.
I don't remember.
Okay. Well, it has this Steam Deck has 720 pixels, 720 pixels when it's actually handheld, and then docked this is up to 8K at 60 hertz, so, or 4K at 120, which is actually, I mean, it's basically a portable PC. Like if we're
no, I think it's going to be cool. The thing that scares me, the biggest thing that scares me, is two things: that B button,
right?
That B button does not bode, because the fact that they released that fucking picture of the console with that B button look, like they think that's okay.
Yeah,
that scares me
bulky.
About the internal
system.
Decision process.
You're worried about that. I'm worried about things like overheating.
But also that's the thing. I don't expect this to be supported a year after release. And that's the big thing that scares me.
It's so expensive. That would be terrible.
Yeah. Whereas like the Switch, yes, the Switch is not as powerful as the PS5, PS4, whatever. The thing that is good about the Switch is that it's Nintendo's thing, so they're continuously supporting it. Also, they have Nintendo exclusive games on it. Like you can't get Nintendo games anywhere else. Whereas this Steam Deck, I can get any game on it on my PC for $650. I can make a budget gaming PC that runs really well. Now, yes, it won't be portable, but
I think if you want to play portable games, it is kind of a hard sell, because like I don't know exactly what game do people want to play portable so bad that they're willing to pay this price to do it.
Yes, in my experience, the portable games I play are usually smaller, like indie titles, titles that don't require a really, like, for example, the Nintendo Switch, I think, is cheaper and already does the job of playing the games you would want to play portably, like smaller indie games, or just
even like Crash Bandicoot and shit like that. Is, you know what I mean? Like Spyro the Dragon.
Yeah.
It has like a lot of those little portable games, like all the Final Fantasies, which are turn-based. They're all on the Switch. 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 on there, 11.
I don't think 12. I don't think 12. No, 12 and 11. I don't think are on the Switch.
I think 12 is 12 the one that has
12 is the one with Vaughn. And,
it's on there. It's on there.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So the Switch actually has like a crazy library of games that people will want to play portable, I would say. And it's like you said, it's way cheaper. It's backed by, a company that is known for gaming. Like it's Nintendo, right? Like it's fucking Nintendo.
Like we all have our gripes with Nintendo, but the point is 4 or 5 years after release, like it's still a supported console.
Yeah.
Now, look, I could be wrong. Steam Deck could be supported, but every single one of Valve's hardware releases before this have not been supported post-launch. So if I get a Steam Deck, it won't be for 2 to 3 years from now when they've proven to me that it's still supported.
Yeah, I don't think this is something that I personally would buy on launch, because for one, I still can't answer the question of what game do I want to play portable so bad that I'm willing to pay this amount of money to do so that I can't already do on my Nintendo Switch. So there's a lot, like that's a loaded question, but they do need to like if you introduce any product to the market, you're basically saying there's a purpose for it. Like there's a reason for it to exist. And I don't understand what the reason for this to exist is quite yet. So,
like on the picture, right? They show some of their games like Control, Doom, Hades, and I can't see that other game on the side, right?
Yeah.
They show some of the games on there. Like Hades is a great example. Hades is a $20 game. Like I don't need to spend $600 to play Hades on the go. Like I have a Switch. Like I can play Hades on the go already. And that's what I mean. Like on the go, those are the games I kind of play. Those games that are like Hades, those smaller budget games, the games I play on the go. You don't need a big budget console for that. Whereas I play like Breath of the Wild at home. Like I don't really ever play Breath of the Wild on the go. I play that when I have the Switch docked and I'm playing it at home.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I like buying new gadgets and shit like any other nerd. Like I love like new tech. I just need to see a reason why I would want to buy this, and maybe it will present itself. But as of now, like you can't even play like Pokemon and shit like that, on this thing.
Because I want to be excited for this because I've been burned though. I bought the Steam controller. As ugly as it looks, I was like, because I still kind of am a Steam fanboy. Like I like Steam a lot. So I bought the Steam controller because I wanted to support, and I was like, even if this one isn't the best, if I can support it, help show interest in it, then maybe like we'll get another iteration of it or blah, blah, blah. Like that never happened. Like there was no real post-launch support for the Steam controller. The Steam console, like the official Steam console they released, I think it was called the Steam Machine. I convinced one of my family members, my cousin, to buy that because he wanted to get into PC gaming. But he was always a console gamer and he doesn't have time. He's got 2 kids and a full-time job. He's like, I don't got time to learn all the ins and outs of the PC. And I was like, why don't you try this Steam Machine? Blah, blah, blah. Broke it down to him. He was like, all right. He bought it. And the Steam Machine, once again, not really any post-launch support.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I fear for the Steam Deck. So like, I can't suggest this to anybody until they prove to me that it'll be supported.
Yeah. And we'll be following it. We'll definitely, because that first month of it being out is going to be all over and like reviews.
Like, look at what was that thing that the Stadia. I called from the gate Stadia was going to flop. I said so early on, I was like, I don't know why people are buying into the Stadia hype.
What was it? What did they drop?
The Google Stadia. There was the thing dropped by Google.
Okay.
It was
what was it?
It was basically I'll just call it a console. It was essentially like a console. You hook it up and you stream games through it.
Okay.
Like, so like you don't buy and download the games, you stream them through this service. So like
they were trying to convert the gaming world to streaming, basically. Like trying
so you could stream Tomb Raider and play it. And they were like, and we use all of this magic technology to make the gameplay experience amazing, and et cetera. They were talking all this shit like it was going to be great.
Right. Like it was going to change gaming.
Yeah. And I remember like hearing a lot of stuff they said ahead of time and saying like on my stream and to a lot of people that I know, I was like, listen, the Stadia is not going to be it. Like, I promise you. That shit launched and Frazier didn't even know what the fuck it was. All right. So the Stadia, and it came out like last year or like 2 years ago. Like the Stadia was a complete flop. Now, mind you, these are 2 completely different companies, but I don't really have the faith I had in Stadia is kind of the same faith I have in this thing. I think it has. I also think nobody would care about it. If this came out 5 years ago, everybody would laugh at it. The only reason why people are excited by this is because of the Nintendo Switch.
Yep. They paved the way for something like this.
Yeah. If this came out 5-6 years ago, PC gamers would be like, I don't fucking want this shit.
Right. But because Nintendo has shown that there's a really big fucking market out there for mobile gaming that can be docked. I mean, it's literally that's their main idea. I feel like the Nintendo, I can't imagine Nintendo ever going back to making just handhelds or just console games.
If they revert, I'd be fucking pissed.
It's the same way we feel about Monster Hunter, right? Like you can't go back. I feel like now Nintendo has to always make a system that is dockable and handheld because Nintendo makes the best handhelds ever. Like that's just, uncontested. Like Nintendo makes the best.
I saw a funny meme. It was like, let me just find it
Here we go again. Quick. Here we go with the fucking memes.
It was good, man. It was like
Sega does when Nintendo don't.
Sega does when Nintendo don't.
Like baby. That one?
Yeah. So, it's a picture of the Game Gear, and it's like, this is going to be the Game Boy killer.
Oh, I know exactly which one you're talking about.
And it's a picture of the PSP. It's like, this is going to be the DS killer. A picture of the Vita. This is going to be the 3DS killer. And then it's a picture of the Steam Deck. It's like, this is going to be the Switch killer.
Yeah. Those never age well.
People keep saying, like, whenever they're like, this is going to kill the whatever. Now, look, the Vita is more powerful than the 3DS, but for one reason or another, the Vita fucking flopped.
It flopped bad.
Like, it flopped.
That shit fell off. I only know like 4 people in my entire time of living that even have owned a Vita, and they couldn't even give me any good reason that they had it. They just kind of bought it because they like buying new shit. Like literally, that was the reason.
I remember I bought a Vita the month before Smash 4, the 3DS came out. I bought a Vita, and my plan was, because I was like really bored and itching for Smash. I had nothing else to play at the time. I was like, I'm just going to buy a Vita and like play what's on the Vita. And there's a return policy. If you buy used consoles from GameStop, you can return them within 30 days. I was like, I'm going to buy this Vita and return it and get all of my money back in 30 days. And
that's exactly so you like rented a Vita is what you did.
Yes. I didn't even rent it though, because at the end of the day, I got all of my money back.
True.
It was fucking amazing.
Yeah, I guess that's not the definition of rent. Yeah, you didn't pay shit for it.
I borrowed a Vita from GameStop. Like that's literally what I did.
Yeah. You had to put down a little down payment or whatever, but you ended up getting your security deposit back. And,
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, that's the Steam Deck. Like I'm going to be following it closely, like both of us will be, because I am interested And like,
I have a friend who said they're 1,000,000% getting it and they're so excited to get it. This same friend never ever touches the Switch. And I was like, dude, you're never going to use it. He was like, no, I think I will. Like, I'll use it in bed. I'm like, you don't use your Switch in bed. Like, I was like, you're not going to, but because he loves Steam so much, he's like, no. Like, I'm like, dude, you don't leave your house. Like, you're not going to use this thing.
I'm certain that the concept of this thing is really like cool as shit to people too. And like in theory, right? Like in your head,
I want to be excited because I really am a Steam fanboy.
Playing certain things in the bed is like a really cool, like there are things that I would like to play to, like, for example, I play DC deck building on Tabletop Simulator through Steam, right? So there's like a multi-layer thing going on here. But like I play the DC deck building card game on Steam through on Tabletop Simulator. And I would like to be able to play that
right on the Steam Deck in your bed,
right? Without my laptop, but I have a laptop which also runs.
Which just does that anyway.
It just and it will run it with a huge screen and a really nice resolution. And so I'm trying to find out, like, I guess when I'm not in the house, not near my laptop, would I have my Steam Deck on me?
It also depends. Like, okay, for example, the Steam Deck is a more portable console than a laptop in that, like, you can't play your laptop on the train, right? If you're sitting on the subway, you're not going to pull your laptop out and play it, whereas you can play the Steam Deck. That said, depending on the neighborhood you live in, I'm not playing my Steam Deck I'm not playing that on the subway anyway.
Yeah, fuck that.
Like, I'm not going on the subway and pulling out my $600 console on the subway so I can get fucking jawed and robbed. Like, I'm not doing that.
Especially, we live in Philadelphia, which I believe we just became like the #1 most dangerous city in the country last week. So
for me, portable means that I play it. So let's say I want to go to Frazier's house and just hang out at Frazier's house for the weekend. For me, portable means that, like, the process of getting there, like, I'm not playing my console, but while I'm at Frazier's house, I've got my little thing I can take out and play with.
Yeah.
Like, that's what portable, it's like, I use it when I go to visit my dad, I play my Switch portable. Whereas at home, I never play my Switch portable, but I don't play my Switch on the way to my dad's house because I'm not taking my Switch out on the L. Like,
I don't feel comfortable playing my, and that's more so a problem with, like, I guess,
depends on your neighborhood.
But yeah, I don't feel comfortable really playing. I mean, you know what I think though? So, like, for people who fly a lot, because when I was I flew to Vegas this year, and when I did fly to Vegas, I was playing Monster Hunter Rise on the plane.
Yeah, 100%.
That was cool as shit to me because literally, high resolution Monster Hunter, the newest Monster Hunter game, playing it with my boy who's sitting like 5 rows behind me on the plane.
That's sick.
Uninterrupted was amazing, right? And then so that is like really fucking cool. That's something that can be done. But for the most part, like, if I'm going someplace, I'm probably with friends. I'm not gonna be like playing my game while they're like talking.
Conversely, like you said, if you fly a lot, big value. Conversely, though, if you have a car and drive a lot, what use does this have?
Yeah.
Right. Like, if you're because, like, there's people that drive it because they have a car, they don't deal with public transit, they drive everywhere. Like, what use do they have for any of these portable comps? You know what I mean? Because, like, they can't fucking play, they can't fucking have it in their lap, play while they're driving. Like,
no, it's definitely it's gonna have to find a specific type of person that will drop this amount of money to play the games they love to play presumably on their gaming laptop or their gaming desktop on a much weaker, like, portable system, like much smaller screen. Much.
Like, I'm thinking about a game that I could see being fun, like the people that are in the Civ, like Civ 5, Civ 6, Civilization.
Don't know what that is, but okay, it's Civilization,
it's like, I could see that game. That's a game that I could play on the go.
They're going to have some hits for sure.
There's going to be some hits on it.
There's going to be some hits, but that's pretty much, I guess, our thoughts on the Steam Deck for now. Initial thoughts, like, these are first impressions. Like,
I would love for a year from now to be like, yo, the Steam Deck is the shit.
Right, this could age terribly, and the Steam Deck could end up coming out and being absolutely insane over time. Yeah, that B button is falling the fuck off.
That B button needs fucking help.
Save the B button. Should we start the Save the B button campaign?
Save the B button.
Save the fucking B button.
The Steam Deck needs its B button saved, man.
Yeah.
Like, what is that thing? That thing, it's just not invited. Like, it's not like, like, look at this thing. The B button is just like, yo, you guys all went to the party and, like, somebody showed up and everybody looks at each other like AX, Y are like, Who the fuck invited B?
It reminds me of that fucking one clip of the Migos interviewing with Joe Budden and academics. And it's like, do it look like I got left off of Bad and Bougie? Like, do it look like I got left off of Bad and Bougie? Like, it's kind of giving me that fucking B button got left off. That fucking B button got left off.
We need No Child Left Behind for the B button. Yeah. Like,
hashtag save the B button, guys. All right, so were you going to keep going in?
I was gonna, like, you gotta stop me because I won't stop. Like,
right, I'm gonna put a hard stop to
you just gotta stop me. I gotta close my tab.
Okay, because the more you look at it, the worse it'll get.
Like, because this just dripping. Like, the B button is just dripping off the side. Like,
came through dripping, drip.
What the fuck?
That shit got left off.
I'm done.
All right. So now let's move on to our listener letters. So, guys, if you want,
we got a couple emails. I got tears in my fucking eyes. I'm crying, yo.
This guy's going through it. Guys, if you want to send us anything to,
if you want to send Steam an email, let them know. Let Steam know to save that fucking B button. But email them after you email us.
All right. You can send your emails to imnerdpodcast@gmail.com. We may read your email out on the show. So we got a couple listener letters that I want to go through. We can discuss these briefly. So the first one is from Vincent. So Vincent said, what are your thoughts on a Yu-Gi-Oh card market at the moment? It's crazy that Ultimate Rare First Edition Doom Dozer from Shadow of Infinity is worth $25-$30, and it's not even a nostalgic card. Something like Ulti First Ed Horus Level 8 being hundreds kind of makes sense, but Ghost Rare Mega Mobius being $40 is ludicrous. Do you think the market will ever cool down for the random old first edition cards like Guardian Angel Joan, which is around $15? Joan should really be like a $3 card max. I just don't understand why a random secret rare most people haven't heard of, like Recurring Nightmare, can justifiably stay at $15 to $20. Hope you're doing well and can't wait to listen to more future podcasts. So, Vincent,
that's fucking crazy.
I was actually telling Kenny that the Yu-Gi-Oh card market, and not just Yu-Gi-Oh, but trading card games in general, the card market has exploded. It has gotten so out of hand with the prices during the pandemic, and like very recently, things have just gone up so much. I won a super rare Minerva at the end of me playing Yu-Gi-Oh in 2016, and I sold it for $950. I think she went for around $1,000 at the time.
Holy shit! I'm gonna have to dig out my old shit.
Yeah, so I sold a prize card for $950 when she was going for $1,000, cash in hand. Like, you take that deal every time. It's only $50 below market. Like, you know, unless I'm trying to hold it for some strange reason, there's really no reason to do that. So I sold it for $950. That same Minerva super rare is now worth thousands of dollars. Like, I'm talking like 2 to 3, maybe even 4K for a super rare Minerva. And it's only, so I won that in 2016. It's now like 2021. So it's been like 5 years. But like the return, like the rate that it has increased, right, is like several 100%. Like, assets don't usually appreciate that crazily in such a short time. It's only been 5 years. And the asset has appreciated like, 3 to 4 times its value. So that's insane.
That's disgusting.
My good friend Steven Silverman, like both of us know him, he was telling me just this recent Thursday, I went to the local, and he was telling me that like everything, like he had super rare morphing jars from Turbo Pack. Those are hundreds of dollars now. He had like Ultimate Judgment Dragons. Those are hundreds of dollars now. Certain prize cards like ultra rare Minerva is tens of thousands of dollars. And like there's an outstanding bid for this, like an Ultra Minerva, where a guy's like offering like $35,000. Like, it is like crazy. At any point, someone with an ultra rare Minerva can say, I'm going to collect on this guy's bid that is still outstanding for like $30K plus. So
how much did you say Ghost Stardust was?
So like first edition Ghost Stardust is either $1,000 or very close to $1,000. Like first edition Ghost Rare.
I have a Ghost Stardust. I will sell that shit.
Yeah, there's the check your old.
It's cards. Been a long time since I've looked at my Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but
old cards are worth.
I think I have a Ghost Stardust and I think I have a Ghost Black Rose.
Okay, both of those. Black Rose too, because that's one of the 5Ds. Any old Yu-Gi-Oh cards and Pokemon, same thing with, like, everyone knows about Charizard, right? Like Charizard recently sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars during the pandemic. But now we're getting to the point where like it's not just Pokemon, it's not just Yu-Gi-Oh, it's baseball cards are going, like rookie cards are going insane. Everything, like the card market, just trading cards in general have exploded, and it's across the board. Every card game, like
that's crazy.
Just Yu-Gi-Oh. But yeah, so Vincent, we have noticed that the card market has gotten out of hand, and a lot of people are making a lot of money because of it. Like, just
you know what I think though, because so Vincent asked if we think it'll ever fizzle. I think it will. I think
there's a bubble to everything, right? Like,
yeah, there's a bubble. I think the biggest contributing factor to this is COVID. If you think about the fact that there's not person-to-person interaction, so access to a lot of these cards has gone down because they're not in circulation, right? So it's harder to get your hands on these cards because you have to find, like, you can't meet people face-to-face and trade face-to-face.
Yeah, and I will say this. I will not buy a $35,000 card online.
No way.
I would probably prefer to inspect it myself, to like meet up and like see it physically. That's me. If I'm buying something for $35,000, that's a fucking car. Like if I'm buying a car for $35,000, I don't know if I exactly trust the mail to like get me my $35,000 card completely unscathed, because it has to be like PSA graded, grade gem mint, like grade 10.
Yeah.
For me to like, you know what I mean? Like if I'm dropping $35,000 on a fucking card, like it needs to be absolutely pristine condition. I don't know if I exactly trust the mail with that process, but
yeah. So I think once COVID cools down more and more, like as 1-2 more years pass and there's more in-person events, I think that'll help pop that bubble. But I think the other thing is, because of COVID, everybody's been at home. And what has everybody been doing at home? They've been on YouTube and Netflix, etc. So they've been watching old Yu-Gi-Oh videos on YouTube. They've been watching shit on YouTube about different formats, and just that all that it's building up. So like there's a lot of, for the Yu-Gi-Oh players, internal like bubble excitement for Yu-Gi-Oh, and they can't release that excitement. So I think that's what's contributing to the market being so high.
And inflation in general, right? Like the pandemic has just created straight up inflation across the board, not just for like food and things like that. Like gas prices have gone up and we've seen things like that, but like inflation across the board, and inflation in collectibles just happen to have skyrocketed more than other places that might make more sense. Like, you know, gas makes sense because, you know, supply shortages. Like if there's short supply of gas, like prices go up. But like cards, you know, supply is very limited for some of the really old things, but there's no real catalyst for it being like, oh, this card's now worth 400%. Like, and it wasn't, you know, a year ago. So
I wonder what Dad's worth.
I'm sure first edition, like secret rare Dark Arm.
When it was played at 2, it went for 200, right?
Yeah, when it was at 2, you can get them for 200, 250-ish. At its peak, they were like 350, 400. I remember somebody definitely saying, I'll do 3 for 1,000 or 3 for 1,200. Like stuff like that was a thing back in the day. So like, but yeah, Dark Arm used to be like in the hundreds of dollars, and now I can only imagine that first edition secret rare, like pristine mint Dark Arm Dragon going for quite a pretty penny. Old cards that are hard to get, like Necroface. First edition Necrofaces. So I looked during the pandemic. Necroface was like $500 before like it got really bad. Like it was $500 for like a first edition Necroface secret rare version. And now I'm certain, without even I'm not even gonna look up anything. I'm certain that it's actually way more expensive now. It's more than, I think that first edition Necroface is probably more than $500. I'm just gonna call it. So but yeah, the market's exploded, and I don't know when it's going to stop. I don't know if the bubble's ever going to pop. But the way I see it is, this is my logic on everything. The price is whatever people are willing to pay.
Yeah, it's true.
So prices come down. If no one buys something, then like, you know, you can either hold it at that price, the person selling it, and just never sell it, or you can lower the price until someone buys it. That's just how it works. Like price communicates.
It's whatever it's worth.
Yeah, price.
Whatever it's worth to you,
consumer.
And whatever it's worth to them. Like, I don't remember what it was, but somebody asked me a couple months ago. I can't remember what it was, but it's something I own. I can't remember what it was, but they were basically asking, like, what would I sell it for? Right. And I think I said like legit like $500,000. And they're like, it's not worth $500,000. I was like, it's worth $500,000 to me. Like I wouldn't sell it. Like you're asking, like I understand that it's not worth $500,000, but like I'm not selling it for anything less.
Exactly. Like, you can name whatever price.
I like this thing a lot. I'm not getting rid of it. If you want to give me $500,000, then sure.
So that guy's $35,000 like bid on an Ultra Minerva is not getting, it's sold, like no one's selling it, then guess what? You have to increase your bid.
Yeah,
it's
that's
worth more
crazy.
to whoever has it. It's worth more. That's just the reality of it. So yeah, that's the card market. So let's go to the next listener letter. So we have one from a lot of people actually do know this guy, Alex Flamer.
That's my boy, Alexander Flamer. That's my boy, the Flame Game.
Alex Flamer, who goes to the same local as I do, and pretty much has been around for a huge chunk of my Yu-Gi-Oh career and everything. He says, so his email is entitled "Quitting Yu-Gi-Oh." So he said, "I quit Yu-Gi-Oh in early 2020, right before the pandemic hit. But I would like to hear what made you decide to quit. And can you talk about what you did afterwards? Like, did you pick up any new hobbies? Do you still talk to any of the non-Philly people you met while you were playing, including the pro players? I would also like to know how I can still interact with some of the guys since I pretty much only saw them at locals. I would just like to do things non-Yu-Gi-Oh related because I don't really have a circle anymore."
That's actually a really good question.
Yeah.
I actually think that's a really good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. So, okay. So he says his first thing is what made me quit? Like what made me decide to quit? So in 2016, Yu-Gi-Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh has always had formats that get like really out of hand where you have very little interaction. And traveling a lot to play in these events where I feel like I don't have much control started to become real old real fast. And also like some of my closest friends like Sean McCabe had already stopped playing the game. So it got to the point where I just felt like I like playing Yu-Gi-Oh when a lot of my friends are playing. And a lot of them just were not playing anymore. And I was traveling to events pretty much like alone or like, I know a lot of people. Like I fuck with a lot of people in Yu-Gi-Oh. But to spend money on hotel and everything, and even with the sponsor, like I had, ARG and PPG, like I've had sponsors and everything like that pay for me to go. But then you also realize you have to like, if you're being sponsored, you are kind of expected to do well. It's kind of like an unwritten rule, and you are compensated for also doing well too. So like we would get paid if we topped and things like that. It started to not feel fun to me anymore. Like I won a YCS the first time I ever topped a YCS, right? So I got that out the way, which is something that a lot of people are hungry for. Like a lot of people who play Yu-Gi-Oh, like they want to win big. They want to have that experience. But I did it so early. And I think that kind of like in a way it ruined me because it made me not feel as hungry to compete as someone who was still trying to like get that glory. So by the time 2016 hits, I had been a YCS champion for like 6 years. I topped a ton. Like I just gotten third. Like I said, I got third. I won a Minerva at YCS Atlanta in 2016. And, it just felt like there wasn't much else for me to do. Like I want to go to Worlds, but then the world system got really fucked when they started doing a whole, basically, if you play in a bunch of regionals, like you get to go to Worlds. Like I didn't like certain things just didn't feel like it's not really.
Some of the Worlds changes. They were.
Yeah, I started to like not agree with some of the things that were happening with the game. The way to qualify for Worlds seemed really shitty to me. Like you pretty much had to have people who literally had no life. They could fly to a regional every single weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday, they would go to a regional. Like no life, and people dropping out of fucking school, literally failing out of school so that they can like have a chance to qualify for Worlds. It was just it just created a really toxic environment. I wasn't really having fun with it anymore. And I also started to focus more on my career. Like a lot of people don't know, I guess, but like I am an accountant outside of Yu-Gi-Oh. I've been doing that literally since I graduated college years, like 10 years ago now. So I'm a full-time accountant when I'm not playing Yu-Gi-Oh. So I started to focus more on my career and just like other things I wanted in life, love life, things like that.
A lot of people don't know this. I'm the janitor for his building.
Shut up. He's not. But I just wasn't really having fun. And I think that's like the end of a lot of things. Like you start to outgrow things. Like if your friends stop playing, and then you're not really having fun because it feels like more of a job and less of like a fun hobby when like, oh, if I do well at this event, I get paid. Like, yeah, that in a way, like that is fun. But then at the same time, it does make it creates more anxiety and more stress. Like, and I think every like it just adds to my anxiety and things to perform at a high level constantly. Yeah, I just wasn't feeling it anymore. So I started to slowly get out of it, and the game became more and more like you just didn't have as much control. Like there were some formats that I gladly skipped over where, there was a lot of FTKing going on, consistent FTKing. I even heard that there were decks that came out that were more consistent than Frog FTK at like killing you.
Jesus.
On turn 1. So like
I quit. I definitely didn't experience any of those.
Like imagine flying to like California, for a YCS or whatever, and then you play in an event and you get bodied and you really couldn't do anything. Like you couldn't do anything. Like you put the cards in your deck like hand traps and shit like that, but you couldn't do anything. Like I just got tired of it.
Last Will and Cyberstein and Magical Scientist or whatever.
Right. Those shit back in the day. I just got tired of like that whole thing. Like Yu-Gi-Oh always has variants. It's a card game. I accept that. But for me, I had gotten what I wanted out of Yu-Gi-Oh already. Like I got the glory I wanted. Like I got I became known. I broke into the top 10 of all time on like certain lists and things like that. So for me, I accomplished a lot of what I wanted to accomplish, and there was really no reason for me to continue to play after a certain point. So I just stopped.
Yeah. I did not accomplish nearly as much as he did, but I stopped before Frazier did. And I mainly stopped just because I wasn't as interested in the game. Like it got frustrating pack after pack. Like every time a new pack comes out, like it's really expensive. And then every time there's a new pack, new band, like it became clear to me that, and I always knew this, but it seemed like it got worse every year, where the game wasn't balanced for balance. It was balanced for profit. Like,
yes.
Like, and when I play a fighting game, I'm really into fighting games. When they patch a fighting game, they're not patching it because they're not making money off that patch. Like when they nerf this character and buff this character, they don't get to resell the character. They don't get to resell the character in a new rarity. You know what I mean? Right. So like with Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like, this is the best deck and it's broken. So we're going to nerf all the cards in it and come out with a new deck that's just so much better. And that new deck would already be so much better that even if they didn't nerf the old deck, that new deck would be better. But they made it so you can't even play the old deck because they'll nerf it. And then you got to buy all the new cards. And like over time, it's like, man, I don't got fucking time for this shit. Like it's too much money. And it's just, I don't like a lot of the new cards. It's like, I just want to play my shit. Keep making my shit unplayable.
It just left a bad taste in my mouth overall. Like, so I agree with you. Like, one, it is kind of expensive. It is an expensive hobby. Like because they don't allow you to keep the same deck for too long, at least from a competitive standpoint. Like you do have to pay to get a new deck every couple like months, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, and some decks, some cycles are faster than others. Sometimes you'd be like, okay, my deck is good and my deck is been good for a while. And then some decks literally will have like 4 months. And that shit is like unplayable borderline, like after 4 months of it being out.
I don't remember the years, but I stopped playing shortly after Exceed Summoning came out.
Okay.
Is when I stopped. And I came back when Dragon Rulers, the Blue Eyes version, because I fucking dick ride Blue Eyes White Dragon, right? Monster you grow up with. And I remember there was a Blue Eyes variant with Dragon Rulers. And I was like, well, I have to play. I was like, I have to play this because like Blue Eyes is competitive. Like I gotta play that format. So I got back in for that format, but then as soon as that format ended, I got out again.
Yeah, that was a fun format, but that was also another problem that Yu-Gi-Oh tends to have. And this is like, I'm gonna just speak from a person as if I'm not a sponsor player. So if you have to pay for everything, Yu-Gi-Oh can start to become very pay to win. And that shit is like, I just don't really like that to a degree. Like Dragon Rulers was very expensive.
Yeah,
Spell books was to a degree kind of expensive. Like some of the more recent decks they can just get really expensive. And like I said, they can completely make your deck obsolete. So somebody who's paying for everything out of pocket, hotel, travel, food, cards, upkeep, like it can become a pretty expensive hobby when you're footing the bill for everything. And if you are like me, you want to be competitive, like it can be really expensive. So
right now, the best player in the world could exist, but nobody knows it because he just can't afford the cards, right? Like, no matter who you are, if you spend
the best player will be sponsored, but I get what you're saying. You're saying somebody can be really good, like really, really good at Yu-Gi-Oh, but because they literally can't afford to like travel a lot. And that was the thing when I was growing up. Like some people just couldn't afford to go to events. Like I would fly to places like to California and a flight is like $600. Like they couldn't afford to spend like $500 something on a flight from Philly to California to play in a Yu-Gi-Oh event. Like they just couldn't do that.
Yeah. Like on top of
that was just a flight.
Yeah. Because if you're a kid, right, you got to convince your mom or dad to fucking foot that bill. If you're not a kid, if you're a young adult, like you probably have a job. Like there's a lot of shit. Yeah. Like there's a lot of shit that hits you once you become a young adult. So like
responsibilities, like it just
having the free income to do that is not easy.
Yeah. There's other things that just need to be addressed, and like you need to be responsible for other stuff as you get older. But then he said, like, what did you do afterwards? So I just focused on other passions, Alex, after I was done playing Yu-Gi-Oh. I got really big into like buying fashion and just like I love clothes, as most people who know me know. I'm really big into clothes. So I started to focus on that more. I started to focus on.
This guy went to a local last Saturday in a fucking hoodie. It's like 300 degrees outside.
Hey man, going from car to door to door to car. So never have to worry about the temperature. I knew, because Silverman was running the local, I knew it was going to be cold in that fucking place. Whenever Silverman's in a room, it's going to be at least 60 degrees if he can help it. Like Silverman does not walk into rooms for long that are not 60 degrees. So I knew.
I respect that.
I knew going. I was like, it's going to be fucking cold in there, and I'm not dealing. And it was. I didn't feel. Everybody could look at me crazy if they want, but I was in a hoodie and I was perfectly comfortable the entire night. And at one point, McCabe even had to go to his car to get his hoodie because he was that cold. So
yeah,
there's that on that. But yeah, I just focused on like fashion. I started playing DC deck building a lot more. Very competitive in that game. I play it online. I'm actually ranked like number 2 right now. So DC is a big thing that I like to do for fun. And I mean, like dating, like stuff like that, like going out to eat with friends. Just also like I travel now, and I just go to the place to enjoy the place, the food, the cultures, like the things to see. Like I don't like before, when I would travel for Yu-Gi-Oh, I would go to a place and like I didn't really get to see the place. Like I would kind of go to the convention center, and that would be it. And now when I go to places, like I went to Jamaica, I went to Vegas, like I go there and I don't have to think like, oh, there's an event, so I need to be testing it, like in things like that. Like, no, I kind of just go for actual vacation now, which feels way better.
Yeah. In terms of interacting with like some of your friends or people that you knew from Yu-Gi-Oh, like just hit some of them up, talk to them, see what else people like. Like there's a million and one video games to play. There's tons of TV shows to just hang out and talk about.
Yes.
Just find stuff to do. Like
I mean, I'm on Facebook. Everybody knows I'm on Facebook. Yeah. I talk to everybody who I know from Yu-Gi-Oh! Still on Facebook. We still laugh, post memes, have comments, and like, you know, all type. Like Facebook pretty much keeps me together with everybody who I play Yu-Gi-Oh! With. Like Jeff, Sean, Steve, like everyone's on Facebook for the most part in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community. And that kind of like keeps us all together. I feel like literally, for whatever reason, Facebook is like the chosen social media for Yu-Gi-Oh players.
Yeah. So, and then another thing for just like once you find a group, you know, getting everybody to hang out in Discord. Like I've hung out with Frazier more like because of COVID or whatever, but because of Discord, like we've hung out a lot. And then like when we hang out, not even necessarily we'll just half the reason why we have a podcast because me and Frazier will just talk shit on Discord for 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were like, let's just record it.
So I mean, I still talk to pretty much everyone from the Yu-Gi-Oh days. You know, people still comment on my statuses and things like that. So there's still engagement with everybody. Obviously, I don't see them as much anymore, but I do actually plan to go to events when they start, at least like the first one, just to see everybody because the pandemic.
That could be fun, yeah.
Yeah, like no one has seen pretty much any of their like across the world friends for 18 months or however long this shit has been going on. So when events do start back up, I actually do want to go to a couple, not as a player. I don't plan to compete, at least not right now.
Just want to go there to chill, hang out.
But just to chill. And for me, there's something so beautiful in that because it's not stressful and I'm not worried about competing. And I just can like literally watch the game without any kind of anxiety. And I used to have a lot of anxiety with Yu-Gi-Oh! So, so then what else did he say? Yeah, he said I want to do non-Yu-Gi-Oh! Related things. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think that you should take the effort to stay connected with people. Like through social media is a beautiful thing.
See what they like, see what people find. Like you definitely know people that played Yu-Gi-Oh! That are into the things you're into. Like I know based on just talking to you from back in the day, like I know you're into like pretty sure like more classic rock music, for example.
Yes, he loves old school rock.
There's 100% people that are into classic rock music. And so you can find somebody that you used to play Yu-Gi-Oh with all the time that's also in the classic rock and hit up like a fucking indie rock concert or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
concerts are starting to open back up and everything.
Go see somebody live in your area. Like go to a little pub that has like people that fucking go, like have live indie bands or whatever, and check that out with one of your homies, you know?
Yeah. I will say this. So Alex, you said you quit in early 2020, right before the pandemic. So like, you know, it may make it feel there is a bit of loneliness that I think everyone has experienced throughout the last 18 months of the pandemic, because, you know, you quit, but at the same time, like the world kind of decided that we should not. Yeah, the world.
The world quit.
Not the world quit, but the world did kind of fucking quit on us, right? Like everyone had to like distance themselves, and you didn't really see no one really saw their friends for a very long time. So that might be making you feel a certain way that you just haven't seen anyone in so long. But yeah. Facebook for me keeps me engaged with everybody. I love Facebook, as everyone knows. Like, I fucking love it. It's funny to me. I love the most ridiculous comments and stories that people tell on that shit, and that keeps me entertained. It keeps me. I feel like I'm always with my friends because of Facebook. So
that's true though. But because of COVID, it could feel lonelier than it really is. Like you could be like, man, I haven't hung out with anybody since I quit Yu-Gi-Oh. But it's also you haven't hung out with anybody since COVID happened. So like you couldn't hang out with them anyway, even if you didn't quit Yu-Gi-Oh. So give it some time. Just try to hit up people on Facebook, Discord, or whatever, and All
right. Well, so that's that segment of listener letters. We have another one that we're going to read in the next episode. We're over 2 hours at this point, guys. So we're going to wrap up this episode of the.
But we got your email. Podcast. We're going to read it. We're definitely going to read it next week.
Yes, we got you in the next one for sure. So this was episode 4 of the IMNerd podcast. If you guys want us to read your letters out on the podcast, please send them to imnerdpodcast@gmail.com and we will read them aloud on the show. I enjoyed talking about Monster Hunter and the Steam Deck and reading our listener letters this episode. It was really fun. And we will be back real soon.
That fucking B button, dog.
Yo, you need to stop. Leave that fucking B button alone.
No, so long, gay B button.
so long, gay B button.